Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, it's just gone 4 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. I hope I have it for the next 3 hours because we have loads to discuss. Keir Starmer and his team in meltdown. He said at Prime Minister's Questions today, I was on with Julia earlier, that his team is united. They seem anything but that, fighting like rats in a sack at the moment. Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, says he's not after the Prime Minister's job at the moment anyway. We'll talk to you about an email that has emerged from Ghislaine Maxwell to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, talking about President Trump. Very interesting development in all of that. And also the police say they will take no further action over the London performance of Bob Vylan, where Pascal Robinson Foster talked about death to the IDF and death to IDF soldiers as well as really soldiers. Also, the new Archbishop of Canterbury backs baptising asylum seekers. She says they may not be open about their faith until they get to this country. Many of them, of course, hide behind that faith and say they'd be persecuted if they go home. You remember the person who was asked which testament, old or new, is about Jesus Christ, and he said the Old Testament, which is, as any Christian, or indeed most people, will tell you, completely wrong. Lots to discuss today. I want your thoughts on all of this. We'll have the man who broke the story about Keir Starmer, Patrick Maguire, chief political commentator of The Times. He'll be on the show a little bit later on. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute please. We'll play those out. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 7 o'clock here on Talk Drive. Well, as I do every Wednesday, I was in the studio with Julia Hartley-Brewer when pre-MQs happened. A very dramatic half an hour, let me tell you. Earlier, the Prime Minister quizzed over his leadership. He faced questions from Kemi Badenoch.
Unbelievably, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's advisers have been reduced to briefing that MPs can't get rid of him, and I'm not making this up, they can't get rid of him because it would destabilise international markets. Why does the Prime Minister think that there would be a market meltdown if the Health Secretary took over?
This is a united team and we are delivering together. Look what we're doing. The fastest growth in the G7. 5 interest rate cuts. Trade deals with the EU, the US and India, all of which they oppose. We've delivered.
Keir Starmer there at Prime Minister's Questions. The man who's rumoured to be behind the plot to take over is Wes Streeting. He's denied that very, very strongly, as of his people. It's interesting, a new website has been set up, Wes for Leader. He says that's nothing to do with him. He denied all the allegations against him in an interview with Sky News this morning.
Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were faked, certainly not by me.
I mean, in fairness, that was a very good answer. The Prime Minister also denied that his close team inside Number 10, his chief advisors, are toxic.
Prime Minister is not going to do anything about the toxic culture. This is his responsibility. Just last night, his allies accused not just the Health Secretary, but the Home Secretary and even the Energy Secretary of launching leadership bids. These attacks came from Number 10, nowhere else, his toxic Number 10. The person responsible for the culture in Number 10 is his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in him?
Morgan McSweeney, my team and I are absolutely focused on delivering for the country. And let me be clear, of course, Mr. Speaker, I've never authorised attacks on Cabinet members. I appointed them to their posts because they're the best people to carry out their job.
not a good look and not a strong position for Keir Starmer. My view is that now this leadership speculation has started. I thought he might get beyond the budget. I thought he might even get beyond the local elections in many parts of England. We have the Scottish Parliament elections and the Welsh Assembly elections as well in May. Thought he might get beyond that, but he hasn't. It's started already. Brendan O'Neill is chief political writer at Spiked. Brendan, good to have you on the programme. How vulnerable is Starmer, do you think, or is this just noise?
I think he's quite vulnerable. I think there is a structural problem with his government, which is that it doesn't know what it stands for. It keeps backtracking on all its promises, and it is catastrophically unpopular. You know, a prime minister in that position is never going to be very secure. The problem I think we have with the Labour Party, I don't particularly mind Wes Streeting. I think he's probably one of the better ministers. But I have to say, what an unimpressive bunch of people we have in this cabinet. You know, even if you go back to Blair and Brown, I remember thinking Blair and Brown were a bit thin in comparison with the great statesmen of British politics, but they look like world-beating statesmen in comparison to the bunch who's in control right now. You got cardboard Starmer, you got the threat from Wes Streeting, who's not exactly philosophically profound. You got the rest of the front bench who don't know whether they're coming or going. This has got to be one of the most unimpressive governments of our lifetime. And I think actually that's the only thing working in Keir Starmer's favour at the moment. There's no obvious political faction that might push him aside.
And also the question of whether Wes Streeting as Prime Minister would make any difference. Would he, you know, politically, he's pretty similar, not exactly similar, but pretty similar to Keir Starmer. He was involved in so much of Keir Starmer becoming Prime Minister. He's been a loyal lieutenant for some time now, and now he's Health Secretary. There are people saying, I mean, Streeting himself has said that the Prime Minister should sack the number 10 insiders who have been briefing against him and briefing other people. Can Keir Starmer reassert his authority, although I suppose that presupposes that it was there in the first place?
Yeah, that's the issue. He doesn't really have much moral authority or political authority. You know, he won that landslide victory, but it was a very shallow victory. It wasn't a sweeping one. You know, the turnout was low. People weren't particularly convinced. People were exhausted with the Tory party after 14 years. They didn't really have much enthusiasm for Starmer or the Labour Party. I think, you know, the divisions in Labour are so revealing because they're so insubstantial. You know, you think about great factional fights in parties in history. You know, think about the wets and the dries in Thatcher's era. You know, that was a difference over real substantial points to do with the free market, the state, how the government should be organised. But the infighting in Labour seems to me to be so petty, just personality-based. I think I'll be a shinier, nicer Prime Minister than you will be. It's the insubstantial nature of this internal clash, which I find actually incredibly worrying. And you're right, whoever replaces Starmer will just be Starmer light. And I think that makes this a really unattractive government for the next few years.
Brendan, let's talk about a story across the Atlantic. This has just emerged really in the last hour or so. Donald Trump, of course, has been in the news saying he has obligation to sue the BBC over the doctoring of the speech. But interestingly, an email has emerged as well, purportedly sent from Ghislaine Maxwell to Jeffrey Epstein, claiming that Jeffrey Epstein writing, claiming that Donald Trump spent hours at his house with one of his alleged victims, according to these newly released emails. The paedophile financier naming Trump multiple times in emails to Ghislaine Maxwell and the author Michael Wolff over a period of 15 years, according to messages released by Democrats on the House Oversight Committee. This is going to turn up the pressure on Donald Trump, isn't it?
It is going to, absolutely. There's no question. You know, it's like Jeffrey Epstein is the ghost that haunts governments across the Western world, or certainly in America and Britain. You know, the UK lost Peter Mandelson over this scandal, and now it seems like Trump might be in trouble as well. I think he has questions to answer for sure. I'm not sure that this is the best way for the Democrats to challenge the Republicans by wheeling out these theories, these claims, these letters, these emails. It's all a bit underhand. It all seems to me to be a bit cheap. You know, if you can't take Trump down politically, if you can't convince the American electorate to vote for you rather than Donald Trump, then you kind of, fall back on these slightly underhand methods to shame him out of power. So there's something unpleasant about the whole thing. However, having said that, if these claims are true, if what Jeffrey Epstein wrote in these emails is true, I do think Trump has some questions to answer. And it would be in his favor just to come out and tell the truth.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We'll continue talking about that story. We'll talk about that later in the programme as well. The BBC apparently has until Friday evening as well to reply about the legal action in regard to the doctored edit there as well. I want to talk about something else. This is the police, the Metropolitan Police, saying on the advice of the Crown Prosecution Service they're going to take no further action over Bob Vylan's London performance. This is Pascal Robinson-Foster. Yesterday we heard finally, after 135 days, that Avon and Somerset Police interviewed him over what he said at Glastonbury, death, death, the IDF. Well, he repeated that claim and said death, death, the IDF, and actually said other things as well at a London concert during the summer as well. And now the Metropolitan Police say they're going to take no further action. Their statement, I just want to read a little bit of this actually. He also said death to every single IDF soldier out there as an agent of terror for Israel. The Metropolitan Police confirmed they're closing the investigation following advice from the Crown Prosecution Service. This statement is ludicrous. There would likely be insufficient evidence to take the case forward. Officers have decided that no further action will be taken. We recognise the concerns that the footage caused, particularly among many in London's Jewish communities. It emerged during a period where we have seen a concerning rise in anti-Semitic hate crime. We continue to work closely with community representatives to understand those concerns, to ensure the safety and security of Jewish Londoners, and to provide reassurance moving forward. First of all, no one should ever say moving forward. That should be a banned phrase. And secondly, there is no reassurance that will come out of this. In fact, it'll be quite the opposite, because many Jewish people, and many others as well, will feel that that Pascal Robinson-Foster's got away with it.
It's so clear now that we have a two-tier justice system, and I tell you who loses out most as a result of that all the time is Jewish people. Their concerns are never taken seriously by people in power. It's really quite shocking. And you think about Lucy Connolly, who was imprisoned for months on end for that horrible tweet she wrote about burning down the hotels, and yet apparently you can just chant for the death of Jewish soldiers, for the death of every single serving member of the IDF, which, by the way, includes British-born citizens as well who fight for the IDF. Apparently you can do that and you can just get away with it scot-free. I think what Bob Vylan has tapped into is something really scary, which is this culture of anti-Semitism amongst young middle-class people. You know, these are the kind of people, they go to see Bob Vylan, who says death to the IDF. They go to see Kneecap, which says up Hamas, up Hezbollah. Kneecap poses with a book of Hassan Nasrallah's speeches, the former leader of Hezbollah. That's a book in which Jews are referred to as pigs and monkeys. And yet there is no pushback on Kneecap for posing with that book, for chanting in favor of these anti-Semitic armies. And there's no pushback on Bob Vylan either. Anti-racism has a massive black hole when it comes to the concerns of Jewish people. And I think anyone who is really genuinely concerned about racism would be pushing back against this culture massively.
Can I ask you about one other story that's in the news today? This is Dame Sarah Mullally, who is the new Archbishop of Canterbury, backing baptising asylum seekers. She suggests that people may wait until they reach Britain to declare their faith due to persecution. She's encouraged churches to baptise asylum seekers. She said that for many people, conversion to Christianity was not like clicking a switch. She made the comments in the context of concern surrounding fake conversions, and in February last year it emerged that Abdul Azidi, the Afghan sex offender who carried out a chemical attack on a woman and 2 children in Clapham, was granted asylum upon his 3rd attempt after converting to Christianity. I mean, it is absolutely clear that this is being abused by people.
It is being abused. We know that for a fact. We have the evidence for it. And, you know, the great tragedy of that fact is that there will be people who come to the UK because they are persecuted Christians. We know that that happens. We know it happens in the Muslim world. We know it happens in certain extreme communist regimes. It's such a tragedy that there will be Christians out there who need our assistance and might need refuge in our country. But the exploitation of the system by economic migrants who just want a reason to stay in Britain, that's made it just impossible for us to have faith in this system. So I actually disagree with baptizing asylum seekers as and when they want to be baptized, because it's been exploited too much. I think there should be a period of waiting, a period of time. Of course, they should first be seen if they have asylum, and then after that we should see really if they are adhering to the Christian faith or not.
Maybe the Church of England's just happy some people are coming through the doors at long last. Brendan, thank you. Brendan O'Neill, our chief political writer at Spiked. And thank you to the person who says, as a biblically literate Christian, I'd just like to point out that actually both the Old and New Testaments are about the Lord Jesus Christ. The first promise of a Redeemer is in Genesis chapter 3 verses 15, and then the narrative builds from there. Thank you. Yeah, I'm very happy to read that out, but I think, you know, the question being asked, which is more about it. I mean, obviously, the New Testament is about Jesus's life and times. I know that from my many, many hours spent at Bible classes and holiday Bible clubs and Sunday school and in church and all the rest of it as a child and as a teenager as well. So yeah, I absolutely take your point. I'm very, very happy to read it out and to give clarity on that. But I think if you're going to ask, you know, which testament is more about Jesus, obviously it's the New Testament. Stephen in Belfast says the Prime Minister offering full support to Morgan McSweeney. Oh dear. We know what that means. He's toast. And Pete says Bob Vile1 decision is a disgrace. He calls for people to commit murder, doesn't apologise, and is let off while a woman who puts comments on Facebook and then removes them and apologised was sent to jail. Is this because of his ethnicity he got off? Is that the reason? Well, we don't know. Certainly the Crown Prosecution Service says that there's not enough evidence to bring it forward. I mean, I just find that absolutely baffling, and I think many people will as well. Dawn says the number of people on out-of-work benefits is alarming. Yep, we're talking about that later in the programme, Dawn. With the proposed redundancy of thousands of NHS staff, the statistics can potentially get worse. Or am I missing something? You're not. Dale in Staining says, I'm so sick of politics, Peter. How many years now? We've had broken promises, Prime Ministers being ousted, arguing like children in the playground. When will they realise that we are here for the people, not their own egos? I know what you mean, Dale. We're crying out for a leadership here. I'm not sure Keir Starmer necessarily presents it. Who do you think does? Let me know your thoughts on all of this. Let me know your comments. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We're going to talk in just a second to James Mathewson, former Labour spokesman, and see what he has to say. And in the meantime, what you can use the break to do very easily is to install our new app, because the app that you might be listening on at the moment, or watching perhaps, is the talkTV app. From the 1st of December, it's changing. It's going to be the Talk app. I know it sounds a bit confusing, but literally it's a matter of going on your phone, deleting an app and installing a new one. I did it in this particular break, actually. It took me about 2 minutes. So how long is this break actually that we have? I think it's about 3 minute break. So if you can do it in 3 minutes, you're all sorted, you're ready and switched on for the switchover on the 1st of December. Do it now, get it done, and I'll talk to you in just a few minutes here on Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to Simon, who has texted in to say, they say that the BBC editing of the Trump speech has nothing to do with affecting the USA election. This is completely wrong. Even Americans have expats. You're right, there are expats who would be voting in this country, but also there are many Americans who can access the BBC. There are about 60 million of them who get some BBC services. I don't know if they got this particular Panorama documentary, but certainly the coverage, which has been called in that report by Michael Prescott, the former Sunday Times political editor, has been called biased. There have been various things, various presenters. He singled out one presenter, a woman called Katty Kay, for what he saw as her bias. I'm sure she would deny that. So certainly this issue rumbles on, and if you want to comment about it, do get in touch, 0344 499 1000. That's the number. Ian has rung about what has happened with Bob Vylan and these no further action being taken after this Bob Vylan concert in London in May. This was before Glastonbury, where he said, this is the Pascal Robinson Foster said, death to every single IDF soldier out there as an agent of terror for Israel, his words. But apparently no further action because there would likely be insufficient evidence to take a case forward, apart from the fact that obviously it was filmed. Ian, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Good afternoon, Peter. What I'd like to say is, when is this witch hunt going to end? It seems to be, because I can imagine, like, I'm waiting for a Keir Starmer will come on the news or something. Oh, I don't know what's going on. I said this shouldn't have happened. And Mahmood will sort of say the same sort of thing. But they are the ones that are supposed to be in charge. It's like the same thing with that West Midlands chief that said, blamed again, it was all the Israelis. Nothing. It's who is supposed to be running this government? Well, the problem is it these Islamists or pro-Palestinian people, or is it people that want to be fair? Because that was the whole thing about this country. It was always fair. But this is ridiculous.
And I feel absolutely astonished and really disheartened that the Crown Prosecution Service said there would likely be insufficient evidence to take the case forward. I mean, what more evidence do you need?
I know. It is absolutely. It's the same thing with the kneecap group that they never got done. It's the same thing. It's like me going out into the street now and saying death to every Catholic or everybody with ginger hair or everybody, with... It was always that sort of thing in the class. If you wanted to take it against a different child, you said everybody that's left-handed or everybody that had blue eyes or green eyes or anything else. But
somehow, Ian, it's okay. I mean, there are people who say things, who think things, who write things on social media who wouldn't dream of saying it about black people, about trans people, about gay people, but the Jews are fair game. The Jews are okay. We can just slag them off and we can just be racist about them. And I believe, in my strongly held personal view, that Pascal Robinson Foster is an anti-Semite.
He is, but do you know one other thing? It's like, you must probably know it yourself, and you are a sort of genuine person. The one thing that always comes out when somebody says, my best friend is a Jew, or my best friend is black, you know they are lying. And the whole thing with Starmer is, and it never really comes out, is that, like, he says that his wife is Jewish, but she never really says anything.
She is pretty low profile, but I do think there's a real need for leadership on this. And I actually spoke to a very senior person who used to be in Number 10 until quite recently, who said it wasn't enough. Keir Starmer, this person worked for Keir Starmer, and this person said it wasn't enough because there was always this kind of, a lot of anti-Semitism, but we can see what's happening with Israel and maybe it's sort of all right. It needed to be much more full-throated. And I think in many of the stories that we're covering today, Ian, I think a lack of leadership is at the heart of it, and the leadership needs to come from the top.
Well, do you want to know something else? And I'll be quite straight, and I'd come from like the local area. Do you know West Streeting has been invited 4 times to go to the local synagogue since the general election? All 4 times, because of Israel, he's refused to go.
Well, I don't know the truth of that, obviously, Ian, but I'm sure you're right. But it's very, very interesting to hear that about West Streeting. He's under pressure in his constituency, certainly. Ian, thanks for your call. We'll return to all of these matters just after I've read out this message from Howard, who says, what does the Met think they're doing? If I posted, let alone shouted in public, death, death to the Islamic Society of Britain, I know what would happen to me. This 2-tier policing and justice system is now set in stone, says Howard. I want to talk about the Labour Party now with James Mathewson, former Labour spokesman. James, good to have you on the programme, and we've been talking about West Streeting. Ian mentioned West Streeting there. I don't know the veracity of that claim, but from your perspective, I just wonder how under pressure you think Keir Starmer is with all these briefings and rumours floating around, James.
Well, Peter, the pressure was already immense on Keir Starmer, and you know, this was before all of this started getting jumbled up into a right mess. And to kind of put it, and I know this is a bit of a simple way of putting it, and everyone has their anecdotes of people to speak to, but I had a friend text me earlier who pays no attention to politics, as I know we all have those friends, who said, what's going on with Starmer? Is he gone? And that just tells you the coverage, the level of coverage we're getting right now, because you know, he thought that maybe Starmer's resigning, maybe something's happening, because things are that messy. And once, you know, it doesn't really matter what the facts of the situation or the minutiae of the details, because once you've got that kind of coverage, once you've got that kind of public perception, that in itself is a problem.
I agree with you. I agree with you, James. I think that's the point. Once the leadership speculation starts, I mean, there's almost always some form of leadership speculation, but I thought he might get beyond the budget, or maybe even beyond the local elections and the Scottish Parliament elections, Welsh Assembly elections.
Yeah, I think he could have, Peter. Seriously, I think several points. I've just been looking back. It's not. I wouldn't advise anyone does it, by the way. But looking back over the past kind of 6 months and back through all of the kind of the various things that have happened, the messes of this government and the kind of chaos that's been, and looking at each of the incidents, there's been like 5 or 6 at the very least, and that's being generous, moments where he could have turned the ship around. He could have changed direction on certain things, and they've kind of half done it at times, then walked it back. And this whole idea of nobody knowing what Keir Starmer is, and he could end his political career with nobody ever truly knowing what he is. And isn't that fascinating, that you could have won a general election with a big majority, turned a political party's fortunes around in a few years, and yet nobody knows what you stand for. And it just shows you.
Would West Streeting, being leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister, actually be really much different? I mean, he's a better communicator, certainly. He's a bit more of a personality about him. He can be quite funny, as we saw in that clip earlier when he was talking about the fact that he didn't shoot JFK and he didn't know where Lord Lucan was. But, I mean, what do you think about the future leadership of the Labour Party, whether it's him, whether it's Shabana Mahmood or whoever?
I do. I mean, I hate to say this, but the Labour Party really needs to do some soul searching before it looks at any talent or replacement. This problem is deep-seated. And if Starmer had done the things that Starmer promised to do during his leadership election to win the leadership of the party, then we might not be in this situation right now. But I'll tell you, it's a real sad state of affairs when we're looking around at the talent, or supposedly the people who could replace Keir Starmer, and this goes the same for the Tories, by the way. There is just a complete lack of big beasts anymore in the mainstream political parties, and I really think that's to the detriment of all of us, because populists are the ones who will benefit from that overall.
Can I ask you about the story as well that's just emerged this afternoon about the new Archbishop of Canterbury talking about baptising asylum seekers, saying that it should be done, and the sort of presumption that these people are actually converting to Christianity, perhaps we should give them the benefit of the doubt, essentially. What do you think of that?
I don't like the idea of any kind of mass baptism or kind of expectation on people to conform to a religious belief. I think one of the most important things that we have in a democracy is freedom of religion.
But the point of some of this, though, when it has been abused, has been, I mean, I don't necessarily want to stop people being baptised. If that's what they want to do, that's what they should do. But at the same time, it's almost to say, well, now I'm a Christian, I would be persecuted in the country you want to send me back to, therefore you can't send me back there.
Yeah, I know. I don't feel, I mean, again, call me naive, and I'm sure plenty of you viewers will, but I just do feel, Peter, like that it's such an extreme length of such a minority of a minority that I'm not sure it's the problem that we want it to be, and that we focus on it being. And of course, you know, at the same time, I understand that people are desperate and people will do desperate things, but I just don't see it being en masse at that level.
Okay.
And of course, the Archbishop of Canterbury, you know, fair enough, listen to him and all the rest of it. But I get very uncomfortable when faith mixes with politics anyway, generally.
We don't do God. James, thank you. James Mathewson there, former Labour spokesman, appreciate his contribution to the programme. And thank you to Marge, who says, the police always get it in the flaming neck. This high-profile decision would not have been made by the police. It's the CPS's decision. Yes, it is, and I made that clear. Please stop blaming the police, says Elle. Yeah, look, it is the Crown Prosecution Service. They acted on advice by the Crown Prosecution Service. The Crown Prosecution Service decided to charge people or not charge people. So yes, I mean, it is absurd, but it is the criminal justice system. Ben in Stockwell in South London says the IDF has killed babies and children. Okay, Ben, so what's the next bit? The next bit is it's okay to say death the IDF. It's okay to talk about soldiers being killed, and that's fine. There's no issue with that, because the actions of the IDF have led to the deaths of babies and children. It was a war. It's still, to a degree, a war. I don't want any babies and children of any ethnicity or background, Palestinian, Israeli, or any other background or nationality or whatever, to be killed. But does that then allow Pascal Robinson Foster to say that he wants every single Israeli soldier to be killed? Ben, I would take a long, hard look at yourself, I think, after sending that one in. The Bob Villan decision is a disgrace to tier policing in action. How do we appeal? It's a joke, says this texter. Becca says the benefit figures need to be put into context because most of the new claimants will be going over to universal credit from legacy benefits. Most would be claiming the old style disability benefit that was harder to get, and you couldn't just say you had anxiety, you saw a person face to face. Be that as it may, Becca, and I think that's a very good point to make. It's nearly half of people in universal credit now don't need to look for a job. We'll be talking about that later on in the programme. Hi Peter, says Leslie, what was disgusting about PMQs was the appalling statement from Ed Davey about Trump trying to destroy the BBC. No mention of the doctored Trump speech by the BBC. I think Ed Davey is absolutely delusional about the BBC. I think there are a lot of people who are delusional, including Alistair Campbell, for many reasons, but not least about the BBC, saying that, you know, it's all a right-wing conspiracy to attack the BBC. Well, we wouldn't be talking about this. We wouldn't have a conversation. We wouldn't have a thought in our head about this particular issue had it not been that a speech and a clip of the leader of the free world was doctored, the meaning was changed by the BBC, and then it was broadcast, and that's fine, apparently. I mean, 2 people have now resigned as a result. I think many more should follow them. Annie in Liverpool says you can't trust any of the Labour or Conservative politicians. They're all as bad as each other. Lots more to come. In just a second, we'll talk to Michael Graham, the US political commentator and managing editor at Inside Sources, about Donald Trump saying he has an obligation, in his view, to sue the BBC over this botched speech edit, and Epstein as well. This news story that's emerged this afternoon about an email from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell claiming Donald Trump spent hours with one of Epstein's victims. This is a trove of shocking new emails. We'll talk all about that. I want your views on all of it as well. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who has been in touch, including Dennis in Manchester. He says, "Good afternoon, Peter." Good afternoon, Dennis. I just thought I'd rant on something that I doubt the people at Talk will discuss, but I am firmly of the opinion that double-decker buses should have windscreen wipers on the front of the top deck as well. Just a thought. Have a great show. Dennis, I think I agree with you. There are few things more pleasurable in life than sitting at the top of a double-decker bus and going around, feeling as if you're kind of driving the bus, but you're not really. And yeah, when it's raining, I've been there. I've wanted those windscreen wipers. What do you think? This is perhaps not the #1 topic today, but if you have an opinion on it, I'm interested. 0344 499 1000. Should double-decker buses have windscreen wipers on the top deck? Thank you to Dawn, who says, "I stupidly thought the demise of the woke Archbishop Welby would close the chapter. Now his replacement is singing from the same hymn sheet." See what you did there. Paul in Hitchin says, "Good afternoon, Peter. James Mathewson saying the Labour Party may need to look for talent is comical. Anyone with absolutely zero talent will do a better job than Keith Stalin," as Paul in Hitchin calls him. I want to talk about another political leader now, President Trump. He has spoken about the BBC suing them for $1 billion. This is what he said about the BBC in an interview on Fox News.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. Why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it, and their top echelon.
Director General and the CEO
This
both
is
resigned.
within one of our great allies. This is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess, but that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical, and they actually changed it. What they did was rather incredible. They're showing me the results later on, the results of what they did, how they butchered it up, but it was very dishonest, and the head man quit, and a lot of the other people.
Donald Trump there, the President of the United States, criticising the BBC. Michael Graham is with me now, the US political commentator and managing editor of Inside Sources. Michael, great to have you on the programme. How big a row is this in the United States? How much notice are they taking of the fact that this botched, well, it wasn't botched, it was doctored, clip of Donald Trump was put out on the BBC, and now he's suing them for $1 billion?
The fight over it is almost as heated as the fight over windshield wipers for the top tier of the double-decker buses.
It's a big issue. It's
almost
a big issue.
Up there, and that's in the range of should the toilet paper go over or should it come under?
There's no debate. It's over. There's no debate. It's over.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's under. It's obviously
no, it's not.
under.
No, Michael. No, you're wrong.
Anyway,
you're factually wrong. I'm cutting you off.
Anyway. So Trump has sued so many media outlets that it's not as big a story. The firings caught people's eye because you see so few firings in the U.S. over incidents like this. But it was interesting. I was just listening to an interview earlier today with former BBC broadcaster Robin Lustig. I hope I'm saying his name right. And he said that
Lustig.
BBC
is it Robin Lustig?
Lustig.
He presented an evening program called The World Tonight. Yeah, he's very respected broadcaster.
He argued that like any large media outlet that does a ton of content, you're going to make mistakes, and that there is no bias. And I about drove my car off the road because yes, you're absolutely right. You make mistakes, but they all go in the same way. It's always a mistake that makes people on the right look bad or make people on the left look good. Where's the mistake that makes the socialists look bad? Where are the mistakes that make illegal immigrants look bad? Where are those mistakes don't happen? It's obviously a biased organization. It's part of the center-left establishment, just like in public radio in the U.S., which finally lost its taxpayer subsidies this year, was a solidly on the left outlet. And that's just true.
It's really interesting you mentioned that. Stephen has been in touch. Let me just read this brief message, which I think makes a lot of sense. Stephen, Scotland, says, "Hi Peter, the BBC keeps saying they made a mistake, but what was the mistake? Incorrectly edited, someone didn't pick it up at review, error in judgment putting it out, before even an internal review has taken place. Everyone is running to say it's a mistake, but not clarifying, and then trying to move on quickly." And Donald Trump is calling them out on this, isn't he?
Yes, he is, and he uses the threat of lawsuits to try to get change. I don't know. There's a question of standing. What court would he file it? For example, the lawyer apparently was in Florida.
Yeah, apparently it's going to be filed in Florida. I think presumably they can do that because the BBC is broadcast in America.
Sure.
I know newspapers have been sued in France, for example, because the libel laws are different there because a few copies of the paper will be sold in Paris.
Right. But you know, your libel and slander laws are much stronger than the U.S. We have the First Amendment, free speech, particularly for political figures. It's almost impossible to violate U.S. law when you're talking about political figures, even if you're completely lying. So I don't know where this goes, but I do think that one of the reasons why Trump has the support he does is that for my whole life, I've been a BBC consumer, and people who are on the political right get treated like crap and get lied about all the time. And people on the left have their total misreporting. The coverage of the Israel-Hamas war, oh my God, it's like Soviet era Stalin propaganda. It's so clearly biased. I'm not saying that it's lies. It's just biased. You know, every story, there are 10 facts. The BBC is always going to pick the 5 that benefit their political allies and ignore the 5
and it can be,
that's just how they operate.
Bias can be in story selection as well as in how stories are told. Tell us about another story that no doubt is on your radar, about Jeffrey Epstein claiming that Trump spent hours with one of his victims in these new emails that have been released by the Democrats. How big a problem is this for Donald Trump, and will he have to give evidence about this? How has he been reacting?
Well, the Epstein story is big. It's a big problem. There are people who are diehard MAGA folks who, want to get to the bottom of this. And when Trump tries to paper over it, they don't want to hear that. They want to go and pursue it, in part because the premise of MAGA is people with political power have used that power to get away with terrible stuff that normal people cannot get away with. And therefore, we need to shift that. We need to, use justice against them. That's why they love all of the legal actions that Trump's taking against the people who attacked him when he was president the first time. It's not that they necessarily care that much about the case. They just want to make sure, hey, you do it, it's the Chicago way. You put one of ours in the hospital, we put one of yours in the morgue, that kind of thing. And so they want to fight, and they don't like the idea of elites getting away with stuff. The Jeffrey Epstein story is entirely about elites getting away with stuff that, when you think about it, is horrifying. The real question is, what do people think Donald Trump knew, and when did he know it? For example, if he's at Jeffrey Epstein's house and there are a lot of young ladies there, is Donald Trump carding them? Is he asking, does your mother know where you are? Or is Jeffrey Epstein just with a lot of attractive young ladies? And if that's, and obviously he was, and a lot of people knew that. So that's the question. Did Trump know something that should have caused him to act? And don't forget, he did eventually act. He threw the guy out of Mar-a-Lago because he had heard words, hey, some of these women are underage. He said, I don't want to be associated with that. Get him out. So it's still a messy story, but Democrats are working as hard as they can to wrap it around Donald Trump. And there will be forward progress because there's a mechanism in our House of Representatives where you can force something to go forward, even if the leadership doesn't want it. Another Democrat is being sworn in today, and that will give them the number they need to advance this investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. And so this story's not going away.
It'll be very interesting to see what happens, and particularly with Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, as we now must call him, and whether he gives evidence to the House Oversight Committee. Thank you. Michael Graham there, US political commentator and managing editor of Inside Sources. David in the Cotswolds has been in touch on the Bob Villan row. Afternoon, Peter. Afternoon, David. Can the government confirm which of the world armies we can shout death to them at? I know it is a public order offence for fans to chant discriminatory, racist or homophobic songs at football matches, but I'm just wondering which armies are fair game, or is it just the Jewish ones, says David. I think that's a fair question. Khaled in Leicester has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Khaled, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I think the media have a great responsibility in that they, what the media portrays, what the media announces.
Khaled, are you there? Can you hear me, Khaled? Let's get him back on another line. We'll take a break now. We'll see if we can get him back in the next couple of minutes and see what Khaled has to say about all of this. Stay with us here on Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Khaled's back. Khaled, good to have you on the line. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Nope, there's an issue with his phone line. Sorry about that. We did try a couple of times, Khaled. We'll maybe try and get you on a bit later. Let's speak to Joanna Marchong now, who is a spokeswoman for the Adam Smith Institute, because there are all sorts of problems with benefits. 1 million more people claim benefits without the need to look for work. It's now nearly half of people who are on universal credit. The number of benefits claimants who have never had to work hits 4 million for the first time. Joanna, what are the factors behind this?
Right. Thanks for having me on, Peter.
Great to have you.
I think one of the major things that we need to talk about is the fact that earlier this week, unemployment stats came out, and it just showed what we all knew was going to be true. It is increasingly hard for businesses to hire people, with Rachel Reeves' new £25 billion a year jobs tax rate, and then also the fact that the employment rights bill is making it extremely hard and very, very risky for employers to take a chance on people like graduates. That's why we have about 600,000 graduates on universal credit and unemployment benefit, because no business wants to take a chance on them.
There are so many small businesses I speak to, people saying, like, I'd love to employ people, I'd love to take someone else on, but it's too risky and it's too expensive.
Well, exactly, and they're completely right. And when you look at the stats that came out earlier this week, you see that the unemployment is up to 5%, which is the highest level we've seen since 2020. It's only really going to get worse. There was an additional 349,000 people unemployed since Labour have taken office. So that what we're seeing now is a direct result or the consequences of their bad policies and what they set out in the budget. And with the next budget coming up and all these things are rumoured to be happening, things are going to get worse. Businesses will feel extremely scared, and that will have knock-on effects for all these people that can't get work. And quite frankly, the mentality is changing where it's easier to not work and not be employed. So
and some of the numbers are absolutely staggering, because figures published by the Department of Work and Pension show the number of universal credit claimants with no requirement to look for a job rose to just over 4 million. That's up 3.9 million in September, 50% above the 2.7 million level in July 2024. Half of the 8 million people in Britain claiming Britain's main employment benefit, universal credit, are now exempt from finding a job. Now, I'm sure, like you, Joanna, I have absolutely no problem with my taxes going to people who are genuinely disabled, who genuinely can't work, but I don't think there are 8 million people in this country who cannot possibly work.
I think you hit the nail on the head there, because we've also a rise in people claiming disability benefit, so PIP payments, due to the fact that there's a rise in anxiety, depression. I mean, there's been work out suggesting that, or showing that people are literally claiming it for Munchausen syndrome. And that's when you believe you have an illness, but you don't actually have one. So 1 in 10 people are now claiming PIP in 2025. And there's a trend to suggest that because you have the rise of online appointments and you don't have the correct checks and you can't get a job, and it's actually easier. And people, if you're looking at the symptoms or the reasons you can claim, you will. So many people will qualify and there's not the correct checks to have it.
Listen, I think that's a really good point, and the Centre for Social Justice calling on Rachel Reeves to withdraw mental health benefits from 1.1 million people suffering from milder anxiety, depression or ADHD to replace it with NHS treatment. The Department of Work and Pensions said the number of people receiving universal credit has been increasing as we have invited tens of thousands of people each month to move from legacy benefits as they become phased out. We're determined to get more people off welfare and into work. That's why we're stepping up our plan to get Britain working with the most ambitious employment reforms in a generation. Every eligible young person who has been on universal credit for 18 months without earning or learning will also be offered guaranteed paid work through our youth guarantee. I mean, that may all be fine, Joanna, but the fact is that there are loads of people who aren't working. There are loads of employers who cannot or are unwilling and scared of the fact that the employment rights that you mentioned there, the huge pressure on national insurance contributions mean that employing more people is just pointless or just too difficult.
Exactly, and you're completely right. What we're seeing now is that businesses are scared to employ people. It's harder to get them in because you have to pay more in order per employee, and then it's also harder, worst case scenario, to get them out. So nobody wants to take a risk on, say, people that have no job history or are looking for a chance, looking for experience. We've seen that the OBR has forecasted the universal credit bill to reach 100 billion by 2030. I mean, that's 4.5 fiscal black holes if you take the black hole to be 22 billion pounds.
Yeah.
When you put things in perspective, we think these are I mean, we're not saying this isn't rocket science. Rachel Reeves knows these problems and they are easily solvable. Cut down the scale of benefits offered. You have to encourage growth, be pro-business, cut back the taxes on small businesses and corporation tax, etc., and allow the economy to flourish rather than punish the people that are creating jobs, creating growth, creating wealth.
Joanna, thank you. Appreciate that. That's Joanna Marchong there, who's the spokeswoman for the Adam Smith Institute. The two-child benefit cap is a big thing as well that may well be lifted in the budget. Certainly, Keir Starmer appeared to indicate that yesterday. Lucy's been in touch with a voice note on this. You can send voice notes in 0344 499 1000. Let's hear Lucy's view on this.
I had a couple of thoughts on the government wanting to scrap this two-child cap benefit thing. I'm not entirely happy with the thought of having to pay for other children. I don't have children myself, but I come from a single-parent family and my mother worked her behind off to provide for me, and she instilled that in me. And secondly, rather actually my money go to homeless veterans, to be perfectly fair. And thirdly, if they do scrap it and we're giving out more benefit to more people with more children, isn't that going to increase the black hole that we're already in that they keep banging on about?
Very, very good points there. And yes, there are many, many problems and it will increase the bill. There's no doubt about that. And you can't promise everybody everything and then say, actually, we don't have any money. Dan's been in touch on Prime Minister's questions with this voice note.
An entertaining PMQs today. But what I find appalling is when any Reform MP stands up to ask a question, is the utter heckling, the attacks from all sides. Why doesn't the Speaker do anything about it? It's shameful, really.
Well, we've certainly raised that before, and Nigel Farage and the other Reform MPs definitely very annoyed about it. Heckling of Nigel Farage has happened a lot. Where is the decorum? On the big issue today, the really big story about whether windscreen wipers should be on the top of double-decker buses or not, Chris in Northumberland has been in touch and says windscreen wipers on the top deck is the road to anarchy. We'd have to write an entirely new verse to add into the wheels on the bus. My daughter would be late for school because the song is longer. The traffic jams would be more intense. Road rage incidents would increase. The mental health concerns in the UK would skyrocket. This is insane talk, says Chris in Northumberland. Brilliant. Many other messages about this. Phil in Great Yarmouth saying, great idea about wipers in the top deck of the bus. You can see the low bridge coming and duck when the driver takes the wrong route. Great show, says Phil in Great Yarmouth. Mark in Stratford says, double deckers, you're making me feel packaged. I think I might go and get one from the vending machine in the break. And Kevin in Southampton says, people on buses these days have more things to worry about than upstairs wipers. And one more, do we have time? Yes, we do. As a very young child, 3 or 4 years ago, I had a recurring dream that I was driving a double-decker bus from the upper deck. This was immensely difficult for a toddler. What I would have given for upstairs windscreen wipers, without doubt they should have been fitted as standard. This would have been made my nighttime journeys much more enjoyable. We're in the surreal nature of whether this should be a debate. Thank you to everybody who's been in touch about that absolutely crucial topic. We'll talk more about the BBC. We'll talk more about Keir Starmer's future. In fact, the man who broke the story, Patrick Maguire of The Times, will be with us in just a second. So stay tuned for that here on Talk. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's just gone 5 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. Thank you so much for your company. If you're one of the car dwellers heading home for the evening, stick with us for the next couple of hours because there's so much to talk about. Keir Starmer's future is the big one, and the person who broke the story about 24 hours ago, Patrick Maguire of The Times, he is going to be with us in just a second to bring us through all the developments since then, at Prime Minister's questions and all the briefings behind the scenes as well. It might seem like a Westminster bubble story, but who the Prime Minister of the country is and whether there's a new one clearly affects us all, especially with the budget coming up in exactly 2 weeks' time. We'll get the latest from Patrick in just a second. We'll also talk about the disgraceful decision about the Metropolitan Police taking no further action after Bob Villan's London performance, where he chanted death, death to the IDF and said that Israeli soldiers should be killed. We'll talk to Stephen Mulholland, a new and brilliant guest. He is Chief Executive of the Construction Plant Hire Association, about the infrastructure problems, skills shortage shortages, the huge issues in regard to building homes and all the construction industry, because there are so many homes that the government says they want to build, but actually getting them from sort of spade to someone moving in is a huge issue, and there are many problems with all sorts of pipeline issues with them. We'll get your thoughts as well on all the big issues of the day. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me at 7222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a WhatsApp voice note or a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. I'll answer the big question today, of course, which is whether, as one texter sent in earlier, which is whether double-decker buses should have windscreen wipers on the top deck. I think you can agree that we talk about all the big issues here on Talk Drive. Stay with us. Well, it's been a big day for Keir Starmer. It's been a big 24 hours for him, because Patrick Maguire, the chief political commentator of The Times, who joins me in just a second, broke a massive story yesterday on a podcast I never miss. It is called The State of It. It's from The Times and The Sunday Times, and Patrick and his sidekick / co-author of Get In, which is the Sunday Times best-selling account of Sir Keir Starmer's rise to power, Gabriel Pogrund, who is the Whitehall editor of the Sunday Times, and Caroline Wheeler of the Sunday Times. We've had her on this programme. We've had all three of them on this programme before, and Steve Swinford as well of the Times, their political editor. They get together, they do a half-hour podcast. It's not just for nerds like me. It's a really good podcast. It tells you everything that's happening in Westminster, and Patrick had a stonker of a scoop yesterday about Keir Starmer, saying that he would fight all sorts of any form of attempt to get him out of Downing Street. Well, earlier today, the Prime Minister was quizzed over his leadership at Prime Minister's Questions. He faced questions, of course, from the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Unbelievably, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's advisers have been reduced to briefing that MPs can't get rid of him, and I'm not making this up, they can't get rid of him because it would destabilise international markets. Why does the Prime Minister think that there would be a market meltdown if the Health Secretary took over?
This is a united team, and we are delivering together. Look what we're doing. The fastest growth in the G7. 5 interest rate cuts. Trade deals with the EU, the US and India, all of which they oppose. We've delivered.
Keir Starmer talking about his team being united. I'm not sure that's true. The man who's rumoured to be behind the plot, he denies this, of course, is Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. He spoke to Sky News earlier.
Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were faked, certainly not by me.
I wonder. I didn't see that interview at the time. I wonder what the interviewer on Sky News was going to ask him next. Well, back to Prime Minister's Questions, and Starmer also denied that his close team, his senior advisers, Morgan McSweeney, as Chief of Staff, for example, were toxic.
The Prime Minister is not going to do anything about the toxic culture. This is his responsibility. Just last night, his allies accused not just the Health Secretary, but the Home Secretary and even the Energy Secretary of launching leadership bids. These attacks came from Number 10, nowhere else, his toxic Number 10. The person responsible for the culture in Number 10 is his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in him?
Morgan McSweeney, my team and I are absolutely focused on delivering for the country. And let me be clear, of course, Mr. Speaker, I've never authorised attacks on cabinet members. I appointed them to their post because they're the best people to carry out their job.
Well, let's speak to the man behind the story, Patrick Maguire, chief political commentator of The Times. Not the easiest 24 hours for Keir Starmer. I imagine your life has been not particularly dull either, Patrick. What's been going on? Bring us up to date. Oh, I think you're on mute, mate. Oh, there we go. Got you now. Go ahead.
Oh, you can hear me now. You can hear me now. Great, good. Well, look, in terms of my life, Peter, my phone certainly hasn't been on mute for the past 24 hours. I think I need to invest in a new battery, certainly, because it feels like the entirety of the Labour Party wants to say something about this story. As you say, I broke this story on our podcast around 4 o'clock yesterday, did a version of it on The Times at 6 p.m. and was quite pleased with what I thought was a scoop, an exclusive, and I was the first one to it. But then The Guardian and the BBC broke similar versions of the same story. So Number 10 definitely wanted it known that Keir Starmer was willing to face down the inevitable challenge to his leadership, and it is inevitable. He knows that. And as the stories went on, they got more and more explicit about Wes Streeting. You know, this idea that Wes Streeting had 50 ministers ready to resign in the days after the budget if Keir Starmer wasn't willing to go. And predictably, Wes Streeting responded to that, as you'd expect, furiously, you know, denying it very strongly overnight, waking up this morning and going on the media round, basically mocking Number 10, saying the people who are responsible should be sacked. And when you read stories that cite the Prime Minister's most senior political aides, as The Guardian did, people are only going to think one thing. They'll think two words, Morgan McSweeney. And that is the mood in the cabinet, the mood among Labour MPs. And it's quite difficult to see now, despite Keir Starmer saying Wes Streeting is brilliant and his team are unified, to see how he puts this back in its box without somebody losing their job.
Well, it's interesting because this speculation, and it is speculation about the Prime Minister's position. I mean, Mary in County Down has been in touch with the text and says either the Prime Minister is about to be removed or he's not. Anything else is gossip and irrelevance. Is it gossip and irrelevant to have this discussion? Is it gossip and irrelevant to actually speculate about the future of the Prime Minister? Because I would imagine your view is, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Patrick, but I mean, this could destabilise Starmer to the extent that he could go, even if it is gossip and irrelevance.
No, you put this very well a couple of minutes ago, Peter. It really does matter who the Prime Minister is. And the fact is, and it is a fact, that a critical mass of Labour MPs, a couple of hundred of them, think he's a dud. Lots of cabinet ministers think he's a dud. They don't think he can lead them to the next election. You know, in May, Scotland, Wales and swathes of England are going to elect their parliaments, their councils, and the Labour Party is going to be kicked to bits. Now, after that, Labour's position may well be irrecoverable. So, and that's before we consider what's going to happen at the budget. Labour are going to break a pledge they made before and after the election to the public, and the public are going to respond in kind. Everyone in government expects that. So the question is not if, it's when. The public do not like this guy. They are not going to turn around and change their view on him. So the discussion among Labour MPs and among cabinet ministers is when do we get rid of him? So there is a threat to the Prime Minister's
You reckon it's when, not if?
Yeah, definitely. I think in the past couple of months, and certainly in the past 24 hours, the Prime Minister's chances of contesting the next election as Labour leader have diminished to somewhere close to zero. And, you know, it's important to be sort of measured on these questions. But looking at my WhatsApp, looking at the reaction to that story last night, that show of defiance and strength from Number 10, you know, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. We will fight this leadership election, trigger a leadership election. Keir is going to fight you. Labour MPs, you know, I lost count the number of messages I got from within government and on the back benches that used the exact phrase, they have lost the plot. You know, they think that idea is ridiculous, and Keir Starmer posing as a hard man, they find actually pretty offensive. So it is a question of when, not if. The Prime Minister is effectively a dead man walking. And I think in contesting that fact so hard over the past 24 hours, he has, if anything, just hastened his demise.
Tell me your thoughts about Keir Starmer attempting to slightly reinvent himself, change his style in regard to how he interacts with Labour MPs. He's having lunch now in the members' tea room a bit more in the canteen. He is trying to talk to many more MPs as well. You were talking about that on the podcast as well. Amy Richards is his new political secretary. Do you think a leopard can change his spots when actually he wasn't particularly immersed in the tittle-tattle, the daily lives of MPs, and in fact on a number of occasions he's got Morgan McSweeney as Chief of Staff and others to sack people and to tell people they're promoted or demoted or sacked because that's not something that Keir Starmer wants to apparently dirty his hands with?
Yeah, look, the short answer, Peter, is no, a leopard can't change its spots. And while, you know, for instance, this afternoon he had lunch with Labour MPs in the dining room that's reserved for MPs in the House of Commons. The problem with this is all too little, too late. I mean, obviously every MP is flattered to hear from the Prime Minister and likes that the Prime Minister knows their name. But they know that Keir Starmer was never interested in this until there were questions over his leadership. So they're not going to suddenly say, oh, great, he was interested in me all along. You know, speak to a Labour MP elected in 2024 and the chances are they'll say to you, I've never met the guy. The guy doesn't know who I am. Right, and that is a hard thing to come back from. And even though Amy Richards is doing a very good job of shoving him in front of people, which he doesn't like, everybody knows what's going on. You know, MPs think it's cynical.
Yeah, no, and it's very interesting. Would Wes Streeting make a different Prime Minister? He certainly have a different style. He would certainly can communicate better. But as you write in Get In, the best-selling Sunday Times best-selling account of Keir Starmer's rise to power, which I've just recently finished reading, actually, this is... You know, Wes Streeting was involved in the rise of Starmer. They're not symbiotically linked, but there are many people, including Wes Streeting, Lisa Nandy and others, who were involved in the rise of Keir Starmer. So are their politics that different? Would we see a change, and could Labour actually go up in the polls? Could Wes Streeting save Labour in any way, or is that just are they just in terminal decline between now and the next election, do you think?
Well, the way Wes Streeting has been talking in recent weeks is he's been trying to be more assertive, trying to be more obviously progressive than Keir Starmer, you know, attacking Donald Trump, attacking Nigel Farage, calling out what he sees as racism on the part of Labour's political opponents. Now, it's a given that Wes Streeting would be better at communicating than Keir Starmer. I mean, it's not hard. You or I, if they made us leader of the Labour Party, Peter, would tick that box because, you know, who wouldn't? The question is...
I think that's unlikely. Sorry to break it to you, Patrick.
But yeah, exactly. If only you were Prime Minister, Peter. But the problem is, and on this number 10 are right, by the way, OK, you can change the Prime Minister so they're not the most unpopular man in the country, but none of the other issues, that's not the government's only problem. None of the other problems are going away. The economy's not going away, migration's not going away, and we don't know how Wes Streeting will deal with any of those questions. Yes, he'll do a better job of sounding like a progressive and may try and tempt back voters who are tempted by the Greens and the Lib Dems. But, you know, what does he think about anything? We don't know. At the moment, the case for Wes or the case for anyone else is they're not Keir. And actually, what we've seen from Keir Starmer is what was his great virtue in the eyes of the public and the eyes of the Labour membership. He's not Corbyn, he's not Boris Johnson, he's not Liz Truss, he's not Rishi Sunak. But what's the positive case for him? We still don't know, and we don't know that with any of Starmer's will-be successors, including Wes Streeting.
And Shabana Mahmood, of course, is a name that is talked about even more. Could she be on manoeuvres as well, or is this just the fact that she just keeps getting mentioned because she is the Home Secretary and she's one of the most senior women in the Labour Party?
Yeah, look, my colleague Jerry Scott at the Times had a story on Monday using that exact phrase in relation to Wes Streeting and Shabana Mahmood, both on manoeuvres. I spoke to Shabana Mahmood, did an interview with her at Labour conference in which she conspicuously failed to deny her leadership ambitions, basically said, you know, anyone in my position would be ambitious. So when Labour MPs talk about this, when cabinet ministers talk about this, they do talk about a contest between Wes Streeting and Shabana Mahmood. They be the front runners, but each, you know, flawed in their own way. You know, Shabana Mahmood quite right-wing compared to most Labour MPs and Labour members, certainly. Would she get through an election? Who knows, right? So it's wide open. And because it's wide open, basically everyone in the cabinet fancies a crack. You know, I hear the name Ed Miliband a lot, which might give some of your listeners nightmares later this evening, but it is the conversation that's happening.
I think the chance of talk viewers and listeners backing Ed Miliband as leader of the Labour Party is probably below net zero. Patrick, just before you go, I mean, you're the chief political commentator of the Times. You're, you know, best-selling author. You're someone with clearly your opinion is very important. I mean, what do you think about double-decker buses and whether there should be windscreen wipers on them? I mean, what's your view on that?
Peter, I'm prepared to endorse the campaign to put them on the top of double-decker buses. I think it's a criminal oversight that this has never happened before. Everyone, wherever they're sat on the bus, has a right to a clear view of the road in front of them. And whatever I can do to support this campaign, I'll happily volunteer.
These are the major issues at hand. I can see the next book being all about that. Patrick, thank you. Congratulations on your scoop. That's Patrick McGuire there, chief political commentator at the Times, on the future of Keir Starmer. What do you think about it all? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Lots of people getting in touch on all sorts of issues, including Shabana Mahmood, of course, the Home Home Secretary. Kevin in Southampton says, I've heard people saying she's a tough operator, but have I missed something? They all seem like weak and spineless fools. On benefits as well, John in Long Lawford says, I was shocked to hear about 600,000 graduates claiming benefits. What happens to their student loans? Well, they don't get paid back, certainly until they earn more than a certain amount. Even more money down the pan, says John. If ever there was an argument for people not going to university, there you have it. These people would have been better off learning a trade so that they would have had the skilled workers for the government's house building policy. Really interesting you mentioned that, says John. Actually, really interesting you mentioned that, because after the next item, in about 10 minutes' time, we're going to speak to Stephen Mulholland. He's the Chief Executive of the Construction Plant Hire Association, and this is skills shortages, falling investment, the real problems with growth in this country, slightly to some degree and alarmingly coming through construction. We'll speak to Stephen a little bit later on and we'll hear his views. I've spoken to him before and he doesn't hold back, and in a second we're going to talk to someone else who doesn't hold back, Jake Wallace-Simons, about the police taking no further action over Bob Villan's London performance, shouting death, death. The IDF apparently is okay now. Apparently that's fine. Stay with us here on Talk.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to everybody who's been in touch, including Leslie. He says the Workers' Rights Bill is ruining opportunities for decent young people who are prepared to work hard. Businesses can't take the chance of tribunals from day one. Margaret in Birmingham says, I think Donald Trump will probably sue, but think he will only sue for about $1,000 just to make a point. Well, he says it's $1 billion. He says he's going to do it in Florida if the BBC don't do certain things, including withdrawing all their points by Friday evening. We'll see what happens. Paul in Bedfordshire says, if you can talk on the phone, you can get a job. Yes, we have to provide for the genuine people who can't work, but the current situation is unaffordable, immoral, and will take the country to a place it will never recover from. Great show, Cardi P, says Paul. Paul, thank you for that. I agree with your points on all of that. I want to talk now about Bob Vylan. This is the musical group that has been saying all sorts of things, including from Pascal Robinson Foster, its lead singer, who he's in trouble with even on Somerset Police. They have interviewed him after he shouted death, death to the IDF. That was at Glastonbury in June. It's 136 days now since that happened. He's been interviewed. He was interviewed yesterday or earlier this week anyway, and we know that no charges have been brought, no arrests have been made in any of that. But here in London, where I'm speaking to you now, the Metropolitan Police, who launched an investigation over what he was said in footage to have said in Alexandra Palace in May at a different concert, so not Glastonbury, Alexandra Palace. He said death to the IDF, and similarly said death to every single IDF soldier out there as an agent of terror for Israel. Apparently that's okay. Apparently there's no issue with that, because there would likely be insufficient evidence to take the case forward. That is what the Metropolitan Police has said, because they've been advised by the Crown Prosecution Service. Jake Wallace-Simons is with me now. He's author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself, which is out now. Jake, another example of how the West is betraying Jews, I would argue, in this absolute nonsense, and it really worries me that even on Somerset Police are going to announce the same thing in regard to Glastonbury. We all saw it. We saw it on the air. We saw the clips. It was really straightforward. It's really straightforward. It's two-tier justice, isn't it, Jake?
Yes, I mean, the police were obviously responding to advice from the CPS, which said that there wouldn't be a sufficient chance of a prosecution to take the case forward. And I suppose, legally speaking, Bob Vylan has managed to get away with chanting for death to the IDF, because the IDF, I suppose, legally doesn't fall into a protected characteristic. It's not like saying death to Jews, technically speaking. He's created this, this sort of linguistic mask by which he can get through the law and keep going. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it does strike a bit of a contrast with the 30 arrests a day that we have seen by the police for people who make comments on social media. It contrasts starkly with the treatment of Lucy Connolly, who was banged up, of course, for that post about migrants. And it does seem to contrast with the police's treatment of people who make comments against the other side. It feels like there's a certain kind of ideological capture of the people who command the police, of telling them to go after people who attack the left, but then don't go after people who attack Jews in the same way.
Yeah, and certainly we know that even in Somerset Police, they say they've taken advice from the Crown Prosecution Service. They've interviewed Pascal Robinson Foster as well. But just some of this language in this statement from the Metropolitan Police. Now, as you say, it is correct to say that they are following advice from the Crown Prosecution Service, and if the CPS say there's no prospect of a conviction, well, they've got to take that seriously. On Wednesday, the 2nd of July, officers became aware of footage that appeared to have been filmed at Alexandra Palace in London on the 20th of May. An investigation was launched into the language used in the footage. Early investigative advice was sought from the Crown Prosecution Service, who considered a number of potential offences, but determined that, based on the information and material available, there would likely be insufficient evidence to take the case forward. As a result, officers have decided that no further action will be taken. We recognise the concerns, this is the bit I want your view on, Jake. We recognise the concerns that the footage caused, particularly among many in London's... We recognise the concerns that the footage caused, particularly among many in London's Jewish communities. It emerged during a period where we have seen a concerning rise in anti-Semitic hate crime. We continue to work closely with community representatives to understand those concerns, to ensure the safety and security of Jewish Londoners, and to provide reassurance moving forward. I mean, if they genuinely believe that, if they really do want to sort these issues out and to assuage the fears of people, why... I mean, more than half their statement is actually about the concerns that have been raised. Clearly they know the concerns. Clearly they're aware of how offensive many people, including me as a non-Jew, have found this. and they've decided not to take action, okay, on advice of the Crown Prosecution Service. But what kind of message does that send, Jake?
Well, I mean, the police are there to enforce the law, aren't they? And if they get advice from the CPS that no laws have been broken, then it's difficult for them to move forward. I think, in a way, the greater concern is not so much the police, it's the venues that continue to give this guy a platform. It's the crowds that continue to ape his chant. I mean, we've heard them in the Aston Villa game against Maccabi Tel Aviv. Great crowds of people shouting death, death to the IDF. He's managed to normalise and legitimise a death chant against Israeli soldiers. That now is widespread. It's become a war cry of the Israelophobic left. And I think that the thing is that it comes at the culmination of 2 years of relentless propaganda presenting Israel as if it's mercilessly killing Palestinian civilians. That has been a brainwashing effort on behalf of the mainstream media. The BBC particularly has been in the spotlight recently, on behalf of the UN, on behalf of many left-wing activists throughout our educational institutions and elsewhere, that have convinced people that the IDF, Israelis and Jews, are these blood-sucking murderers of yore that like nothing better than killing babies in their spare time. Baby murderer is now a common insult thrown at Jews, which has been the case since 1144 in Norwich with the advent of the blood libel. So I think that this propaganda has softened people up to think, you know what, maybe they are baby killers. You know, we've seen so much of it on our screens. All the footage on our screens has been edited or censored by Hamas to ensure that you never see any killed or wounded Hamas fighter. You only see civilians. So it looks as if we've seen the evidence that only civilians have been killed and that Israel's targeting civilians. And people have been brainwashed by this, I think. And so the sensitivity to this sort of a chant, I think, OK, well, fair enough. The IDF are murderers, they're evil, death to them. But really, from a Jewish point of view, and indeed from anybody who's sane, from their point of view, they can see that death to the IDF is just a code for your hatred of the Jewish people in the mouths of many of the people who chant that. It's just a code. It's a code that allows you to avoid legal penalty. It's a code that allows you to manifest your anti-Semitism openly and yet claim that you're not anti-Semitic at the same time. You know, Jews, as Christopher Hitchens quoted Victor Klemperer, Jews are a seismic people, meaning that we feel the first tremors of the earthquake as it advances. And Jews feel that now with this chant and with other things. You feel that. A lot of right-thinking people can feel that this is wrong. This is not coming from a reasonable political point of view. This is a tremor of an earthquake that's coming for the Jews first and for society next. And we don't want it to continue, but the police seem to be powerless to stop it, and society is embracing it by continuing to give this man a platform.
Jake, as always, thank you. Jake Wallace-Simons there, author and columnist. He's the author of Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself. It's out now. Lots to discuss on all of that. Joan is in Sunderland and has given me a ring about this, 0344 499 1000. Joan, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
I'm absolutely disgusted with this verdict. I'm disgusted at the length of time it took Avon and Somerset police to do anything about it. I'm disgusted at the conclusion that the CPS came to, because I watched you show a clip from the Netherlands, and it wasn't just about Israeli soldiers, because if I'm not mistaken, he also was saying something about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, it was horrible when Charlie Kirk died. He said all sorts of really grossly offensive things about Charlie Kirk, certainly Pascal Robinson Foster. He's just not a nice person. He is a hateful person. He's someone who I believe is anti-Semitic.
Yeah, but how can he get away with things like that?
He just has. He just has. The Crown Prosecution Service says there's insufficient evidence there, and apparently what we're being told by the Crown Prosecution Service is that there was no realistic prospect of a conviction, Joan.
Well, I mean, I rang before when I heard about the Charlie Kirk thing, and I said, what does he have to say things like that for?
Yeah.
That man was murdered. He never even met that guy. Mm-hmm. He has to say horrible things about people. But what I'm worried about now is the Crown Prosecution Service has given him leave to say what the heck he likes in the future.
Yeah.
And I hate what's going on in this country about anti-Semitism. Aston Villa, that was a lie. It was anti-Semitism. And the Crown Prosecution Service is an absolute disgrace, because I used to believe in lawmakers, lawgivers, law enforcers, but I am seriously having my doubts now about the fairness of things. There's just no need for this at all. It's evil.
Joan, thank you. I agree with everything you say, actually. Elisa, who is in Israel, says, how about asking the head of the Crown Prosecution Service on your show to explain their appalling decisions? I'm truly disgusted, says Elisa. Well, thank you for that. There are a lot of people really, really angry about this. We'll take more calls about it. Lots of people talking about the economy as well, and Edward says, so there's been 4 million people out of work and not required to look for work for one medical reason or another. I speak from experience that to qualify any claim must be supported by extensive medical evidence, very exhaustive telephone calls for the Department of Work and Pensions, and it takes months and months, so aren't the doctors at fault for supporting the claims? And on child benefits, Margaret says, with all these U-turns on the child benefit cap, etc., by the time the next government is in number 10, the country will be bankrupt. Thousands more crossing the channel. Perhaps that is the agenda. Leave it in a right mess. The WASPy women is something that Allah wants to talk about. He says, nice if the WASPy women get a payout. Maybe the unfair low pension on those people born before 1951 will be next, but I doubt it. And Bob says, don't forget the sunroof for the bus. That is a must, says Bogner Bob on the debate that continues about double-decker buses. Yes, really. Lots to discuss. We'll talk to Stephen Mulholland in a second. He's Chief Executive of the Construction Plant Hire Association. He has a lot to say about construction. The government say they want 1.5 million homes built in the course of the Parliament. I think that's impossible. There is a major pressure on infrastructure in this country. Stephen's going to talk about the skills, the kind of things that Rachel Reeves wants to happen, and the kind of skills and people with those skills that she wants to get into the economy. We'll talk to Stephen in just a second here on Talk. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the government has said on a number of occasions, including on its manifesto, that it wants to build 1.5 million new homes. Well, where are the skills, where are the people who are going to do that going to come from? There are many problems. Major new report by Oxford Economics for the Construction Plant Hire Association's chief executive sitting in front of me here, Stephen Mulholland, warning that Britain's £530 billion construction and infrastructure pipeline is starting to crack. We've got things like skill shortages, falling investment, delivery delays, threatening to derail government growth plans. Stephen, we've spoken before, but it's great to have you in the office. I know in the studio. I know you have been in construction plant hire for many years. You're now part of the association here. When you look at what the government is trying to do, when you look at what the country is trying to do to build all these homes, to build all these businesses and new organisations looking for places to work, what do you think? Because you've been talking to government for quite a while about this. Are they listening properly? Are they taking the action that needs to happen? When the budget comes up in a couple of weeks, will you be a happy man, do you think?
Yeah, no, probably not. Our story begins after the last budget and in the run-up to that. When the announcements were made about NI charges, about BPR, inheritance tax
What's BPR, sorry?
And business property relief.
Okay.
What we went away and done, we found out that 95% of our members and closer to 99% of the wider industry are independently family-run businesses. It's not the household names that you maybe see that do the actual work. They manage and develop. So these guys do all the work, and we thought, hang on, they're going to have a problem. I was one of those businesses up until 18 months, 2 years ago. Because they don't have the cash to pay those bills at all, create a confidence problem. There's an announcement of 1.5 million new homes. The money that was generated through those potential tax increases was already spent. So that money had gone to various things, public sector, NHS, without any productivity efficiency gains. I keep throwing in the Chagos Islands, which everyone laughs at, but it brings it up to roughly 100 billion, which isn't going back into the real drivers for growth. So no one was listening. We asked government after that budget, where did they get the figures from? We didn't get an answer, and that was the Treasury. We then got to the new year, and there was the launch of the or the rollout of the Comprehensive Spending Review, the National Infrastructure Plan, all of this on top of the 1.5 million homes. Now that should be great news, but if that announcement had have came before all the tax increases, if some of that money had been used to fund that growth, then we'd be in a much better place.
And Labour politically really bet the farm on growth. They want growth in the economy, and construction is somewhere where it can come from. But the report really paints a stark picture. 250,000 additional construction workers are needed to deliver planned projects. Nearly 500,000 are due to retire in the next 15 years. I mean, we've been talking today about the number of people in universal credit, for example, 8 million people out of work benefits. And many of those people, some of them anyway, could certainly work in construction, but actually that's not going to happen overnight. It would take a long time, and you want them to work. You want them to have the skills and to have the wherewithal to help you in your industry. But if 250,000 are going to need them, and 44% of firms reporting labour shortages restricting activity, that's the worst of any major UK sector.
Yes, it is. What I have to say is we commissioned this report after the last budget, and it was because we needed to get the data, we needed to know where we stood, we needed to understand what was behind the monetary value, the 800 projects that are part of this £530 billion potential fund that could help, that could fund those projects. That 530 billion isn't there. The report states roughly 285 might be there. That's still leaving a lot to get through. There's only 14% of the jobs of those 800 that are actually, as of July's figures, it will be updated again December, January, that are actually ready to go. So what's happening is the supply chain, the pipeline of work, it's just not there at the moment. So people are actually suffering. You can't take people on and train for building works that aren't going on. You're absolutely spot on about the figures that were mentioned. It was 250,000 shortages for infrastructure. There's 500,000 going to retire out the industry in the next 10, 15 years. And then we've got the houses, the fabled 1.5 million new houses to build as well. So the industry is getting used as a political football, and that's where we've said, well, look, if all this goes ahead, we can be a real driver for growth, because for every £1 that's, well, quite simply, if that 100 billion could be found and spent, that would generate 315 billion between now and 2039 for the economy, so it's not taking on any more debt. But the problem they have just now is getting everything through, planning the regulatory issues, and then finding the funding. It's going to need a lot of private partnership input, and it needs confidence. We need proper policies that can help growth.
Confidence is a major part of this, and we have a lot of viewers and listeners who will be, they'll be standing there at this moment on their feet, doing the kind of jobs that you're very familiar with. You're a doer, Stephen, and you represent a lot of people who are doers. There will be people in their van now going to a job or coming home from their job at the moment, people plastering a wall or building something, and they will say, "What about the confidence? Where's the confidence? What kind of confidence do you have in government at the moment?" Because I know you've been into some government buildings, you've seen what's happened there. I mean, tell me, this is sort of a reasonably new thing for you as well in the last couple of years since you've taken over the Construction Plant Hire Association. What do you see when you're in those buildings, in those government buildings, when you're talking to government ministers, trying to get your case across and say all this stuff that needs to be said?
An absolute lack of understanding of how things work, a real lack of urgency, that these people you've just described need work now. We need projects starting today to keep everyone busy. The phrase in our industry that's getting used at the moment, Peter, is jam for tomorrow. It's all jam for tomorrow, it's all promises. Personally, where it snapped with me was the build baby build when the new housing secretary came on, because we know it's not happening within the industry. We know there's a lot of work to get done. We need good engagement with the supply chain. This Oxford Economics report has been sent out to all the ministers that matter, a lot of the civil service. There's far too many layers, Peter. There's so many things holding things up. If you can imagine, the meat and the pie are the guys that are out there doing the work, the boys and girls that are running the jobs, the hands-on labour, the management, they're at the sharp end. But the layers and layers of regulation, of planning, bureaucracy, politics, it's actually been a real eye-opener.
And interestingly, with young people as well, apprenticeship completion has slumped to 53% pay for young workers in construction, falling below the wage rates in the retail sector. So if you're saying to a young person, are you, they're hard jobs that the people you represent are often, they're tough jobs. There are people standing outside. I've seen them outside this building, for example, working on the bridge outside this building, where they're, it's the middle of the night sometimes. It's wet, it's windy. And you're saying to someone, actually, we're going to pay you less than if you're standing in a nice warm branch of Next or whatever behind a till. That is not a good thing. And when you're saying complete your apprenticeship, well, where's the incentive to do that, especially if you're not necessarily going to have work that you can rely upon at the end of it? So
that's the important thing, is the work that you can rely on at the end of it. If you see out an apprenticeship, and there's now certain trades that we're able to offer shorter term skills training, which will get you up to the mark to get onto sites for various things, some plant operations ones which we're involved in are hugely successful. If you can get the youngsters to see out that time, there is a great career ahead of them. There really is. I've been there and done it myself from being an apprentice. I know lots of other people that run successful family businesses now.
So you started as an apprentice yourself?
That have managed to succeed. And they're the people that are getting hit hardest by these policies, and tax policies in particular, which PLCs, private equity, foreign businesses don't have to, they'll not be affected by any of this. And yet these guys are
it must be so
85%.
frustrating for you. I mean, I'm frustrated listening to it. You're living it, Stephen. It must be so frustrating for you going into the Treasury, talking to senior ministers, talking to senior civil servants, saying, this is basic stuff. This is really straightforward. Get people to finish their apprenticeships, help them do that, pay them a reasonable wage, give some certainty about what the work will be. I mean, I'm not an expert. I'm an interviewer with an arts degree, sitting here listening to you, reflecting this back to you, and you know all this, and you must be tearing your hair out.
Yeah, people who run their own businesses across the country within our sector and other sectors, because you can draw a comparison with farmers as well. The people who provide the infrastructure, all the things we take for granted, whether it's guys that know nothing about building and construction infrastructure, the minute you switch on your computer, that Wi-Fi starts with a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
This building started with a hole in the ground. The people that feed us, that's the people that are getting hit hardest. It's massively frustrating. There needs to be reversals. You asked about the budget coming up. We want to see a reverse in NIC. We would like to see a reverse on the inheritance tax and BPR changes that's been made. We need a really concrete pipeline of works coming through. This report, there's a lot of good minds behind this report, and they can actually really help as well.
Okay.
And that's what this is about. It's not about just kicking the industry, kicking the government, far from it. It's about promoting the industry to government to pull their finger out with a sense of urgency and find some funding and find models that actually work, rather than sitting thinking, oh, we tried PFI before, it didn't work out brilliantly. But
and getting some of the growth they keep talking about and saying they want for this country, which is at such a low level. Stephen, great to talk to you. Great to have you in the studio. You're welcome anytime.
Thanks for having me.
Stephen Mulholland, there, Chief Executive of the Construction Plant Hire Association. What do you make of this? Maybe you're one of the people affected by this. Maybe you're one of the people listening right now in your van, or you're on a job, or you're on a building site and you have this in your AirPods. Whatever you think, you let me know. 0344 499 1000. We're going to take your calls on all sorts of issues, on tax rises, on the BBC, on Bob Villan, whatever you want to talk about today. You give me a shout. 0344 499 1000.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, however you're watching or listening to me today and to Talk, I really appreciate it, whether it's DAB+ radio, your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, your connected device, however you're getting us today, thank you for listening. And whether you're one of the car dwellers going home, or whether you're sitting at home, whether you're out and about with your headphones in, taking a walk, whatever you're doing, thank you for listening, thank you for watching. And if you use the app, the talkTV app, you're going to need to change it. It'll take you about 2 minutes. The talkTV app is being discontinued at the end of this month. You just delete that. You go on the App Store, whether it's in Google Play or the Apple App Store or whatever, and just look for the one just called Talk, just Talk, and then download that. It's a better app, it's an easier app, and it has not just us but our stable mates as well, Times Radio and Virgin Radio and all the rest of them. And you can see us, you can hear us, and I've downloaded it. It took me a couple of minutes, and if you do that, I get a gold star from the management. So thank you very much to everybody who has done that so far. Right then, let's take a couple of calls on Bob Villan. Brian's in Blackpool and would like to make his point. You're very welcome, Brian. What would you like to say?
Good evening. I'd like to say about Bob Villan, people don't mention the IDF. It's actually made up of 1,500 Arab Muslim Israelis, 6,750 Druze, Christians, and Jews.
Yeah.
It's something that's never mentioned.
Well, thanks for making that point, and it's a very good point to make, because Israel is a democracy. It's got lots of different ethnicities who live there, predominantly Jewish people, of course. But if you're an Israeli citizen, and if you're around 18 or 19, you're going to be called up for military service, aren't you, Brian?
That's true, because I was when I was a kibbutznik in 67 and 73. I was in the IDF, and I actually had. My tank commander was ex-British deserter from the British Army that was stationed in Egypt.
What do you think of the decision not to prosecute Pascal Robinson Foster for his comments at Alexandra Palace, Brian?
Well, this is typical. It's two-tier, isn't it? I've worked as a London cab driver for 50 years, and I've found this with the police and the public, the DPS, always sort of go onto the side of they don't want to upset one side of the community.
Well, they should just follow the law, I think, Brian. Listen, thanks for your points. And it's really interesting, actually. It was the police, of course, who would technically take the decision in the Bob Villan case. The police asked for early advice, as I understand it. I'm not a lawyer, but as far as I understand it, when the police asked for early advice, the CPS, they answer legal questions, what offences might be applicable, what further evidence they should gather, but they don't actually inform the police whether or not to proceed or not, and whether or not there's a realistic prospect of conviction. As far as I understand it, what I'm told anyway by those in the know, is that I've a few friends here, lawyers, that the CPS cannot make that decision without a full file, and typically the police provide only a skeleton file during the early advice. Only when the police submit a full file, once they've decided there is a realistic prospect of conviction, will the Crown Prosecution Service review the file and make a formal decision. So it's possible the CPS would have also decided to take no further action, but it seems this is certainly the police, the Metropolitan Police, who've made this decision in regard to Pascal Robinson Foster, and they've put out a statement with that in mind. We've got a voice note on Bob Villan from Sean. This is what Sean has to say.
I'm sat in my car and I am absolutely flipping speechless. How can they say that there's not enough evidence to do him for saying death to the IDF? How can they say that? This country, mate, I've served the Queen for 30 years. I'm a proud Britishman, Englishman. I'm proud of my country, but right now, I flipping hate it. I hate what is going on.
Sean, I think an awful lot of people feel the same way, and the problem is now that Avon and Somerset Police here are also being advised by the Crown Prosecution Service. Presumably they will make the same decision. So it took them 135 days to actually interview Pascal Robinson Foster, the scumbag from Bob Villan, who made these remarks, anti-Semitic remarks, in my strongly held personal view. I think it's very straightforward for people to see that, but nonetheless, there doesn't seem to be any action being taken. Even in Somerset Police, they are very, very welcome to come on. They have interviewed him. That's fine, good for them. Are they going to recommend that he is arrested? Are the Crown Prosecution Service going to press charges? We'll see what happens. With today's development with the Metropolitan Police about the earlier concert, I am not I'm not feeling, a huge amount of confidence in all of that. Nick says the Metropolitan Police have dropped all the charges against Bob Villan. I wonder if they'll drop my speeding ticket going 3 miles an hour over the limit at 2:30 in the morning. I doubt it, says Nick. No surprise that Starmer once led the Crown Prosecution Service, says John. They're not fit for purpose. That's Jonathan in Nottingham there. And another person says, if you stand up in public and shout death to Labour on the left, can you imagine the fallout? Max in Warwickshire says, said Joan from Sunderland. You took the words right out of my mouth. Keith is in Huddersfield. Keith, we're just coming up to the 6 o'clock news, of course, but I know you have some thoughts about tax in the BBC. Tell me your thoughts.
BBC first, where they keep talking about mistakes, right? Every one of them is a mistake. The mistake they've made is it wasn't quick enough to cover it up.
It was a botched job, it was a doctored job, it was something that was deliberately done to change the meaning of what Donald Trump said.
Yes, right, I accept that, but they keep saying it's a mistake.
Yeah, it's not.
The mistake they made was they wasn't good enough to cover it up.
Yeah.
That's the mistake they made. The other thing regarding the taxes, right, I find now amazing that they're going to remove that cap on the children's benefit.
Two-child benefit cap, yeah.
Yeah, they're talking about doctors are going on strike. I'm telling you now, if they put 2p, as they're going to do, onto basic rate, all that money is going to go to the 3 items what's in the news at the moment. There's one with is it pensioners, ladies, pensioners, WAPSI?
Yeah, WASPI, yeah.
Yeah, WASPI, right. Them 3 things, that's what that money's for. Oh, part of that money's for.
And none left for the rest of us, Keith, and the problems that the government has and the black holes they have. Listen, I think that's a really, really interesting set of points. I really appreciate you giving me a ring on it, Keith. That's Keith in Huddersfield. We are in a crisis. There's a financial crisis. There is a wider economic crisis. There's a construction crisis we've been talking about as well. There's a crisis of leadership. We're going to be talking more about that in a second. And there are lots of people who have lots of views. If you're one of them, you give me a shout, 0344 499 1000. We're continuing the debate as well on double-decker buses. Ali says if you're going to put front wiper blades on the top deck of a double-decker bus, then surely you've got to put the rear wiper blades on the rear top deck of the double-decker bus, because people have the right to see where they have been. I mean, all of these points are fascinating. I think we'll perhaps leave that now. But if you have further thoughts on window wipers on double-decker buses, something I thought I'd never say, you can get in touch. Certainly, we'll talk more about Keir Starmer in just a second, and about Donald Trump as well, and the Epstein email. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's just gone 6 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company, no matter where you're going, what you're doing, however you're listening or watching us. You are so welcome to the programme. For the next hour, I will be here, then Kevin O'Sullivan between 7 and 10. But I'm here tomorrow and Friday between 4 and 7 here on Talk Drive. Loads to talk about today, of course. Keir Starmer's position, a very difficult Prime Minister's questions for him. Construction, the construction sector, lots of people getting in touch about that and how we get the growth Britain needs, the real problems in our economy, especially for Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, who is going to give the budget exactly 2 weeks today. We'll talk as well about what's in the Sun tomorrow and about the many problems politically that we're having. Whatever you want to talk about, whether it is Bob Villan, the fact that Pascal Robinson-Foster has had any action dropped against him by the Metropolitan Police because of what happened at Alexandra Palace in May when he said death to the IDF. That is something that no further action will be taken of. Even in Somerset, Police may take action. They're talking to the Crown Prosecution Service at the moment. They finally interviewed him after 135 days. Lots to discuss on all of that. So you let me know what you think of all of it, whether it's the BBC, two-child benefit, tax rises, mass baptisms. We're talking about all sorts of things today, as well as double-decker buses. Yes, really. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a voice note, less than a minute, please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number, 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 7. Stay with me here on Talk Drive. Just before we get into Keir Starmer's woes, I want to thank Helen Elliott, who has been in touch on Twitter. Really lovely message. She said, I was on the tube this lunchtime and I heard you chatting to those 2 American tourists who were asking which stop to get off at. You were so kind to them. I bet they have no idea you present a radio programme. Well, listen, Helen, thank you. Yeah, there were 2 really nice people in my part of London. They didn't quite know where they were going. I walked them down to the tube station and then went with them a couple of stops. It happened to be on my route in to Talk, so they had a nice time. Anyway, in London, they were enjoying themselves. But Helen, what a lovely message. I'm really touched by it. And yeah, we all have to be friendly and helpful to people, of course, who are asking directions or welcoming tourists who are, of course, spending money in our economy. And our economy is the major issue that Rachel Reeves will have to deal with every day, of course, but particularly in a couple of weeks when the budget happens. But certainly the position of her boss is a big issue. In fact, we have some breaking news right now, and that is that Sir Keir Starmer said he made an unfortunate error in confirming he was content with the appointment of the Labour donor David Cogan as the chairman of the Independent Football Regulator. That's a letter to his ethics advisor. Well, we know that Rachel Reeves had problems with the ethics advisor when she was dealing with the problems with her home in South London and renting that out. Then there was another issue with Lisa Nandy, the culture secretary. She appointed this man, David Cogan, to be the chairman of the Independent Football Regulator. He had donated to her leadership campaign. She ran for leader, I think, in 2019, actually, against Keir Starmer, if memory serves me correctly. And David Cogan had given her, I think, about £3,000, yet he was she sort of recused herself in the parlance from the appointment of David Cogan as the chairman of the Independent Football Regulator. But of course, Keir Starmer signed it off. He now says that he made an unfortunate error in confirming he was content with the appointment of David Cogan, the Labour donor, as the chairman of the Independent Football Regulator. He has written to his ethics advisor, that is Sir Laurie Magnus, who is the independent advisor on ministerial interest, the ethics advisor. Well, Keir Starmer under pressure earlier today as well at Prime Minister's Questions. He was quizzed over his own leadership at Prime Minister's Questions. He faced questions, of course, from many MPs, including 6 of them. She used 3 of them on this particular issue, from Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, leader of the Conservatives.
Unbelievably, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's advisers have been reduced to briefing that MPs can't get rid of him, and I'm not making this up, they can't get rid of him because it would destabilise international markets. Why does the Prime Minister think that there would be a market meltdown if the Health Secretary took over?
This is a united team and we are delivering together. Look what we're doing. The fastest growth in rate cuts, trade deals with the EU, the US and India, all of which they oppose, we've delivered.
Keir Starmer there in the comments earlier. Well, the man who's rumoured to be behind the plot, although he denies this completely, is the Health Secretary Wes Streeting. He denied all of it in an interview with Sky News.
Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were faked, certainly not by me.
Back at Prime Minister's questions, the Prime Minister also denied that his close team inside Number 10, headed by his Chief of Staff Morgan McSweeney, has created a toxic atmosphere.
The Prime Minister is not going to do anything about the toxic culture. This is his responsibility. Just last night, his allies accused not just the Health Secretary, but the Home Secretary and even the Energy Secretary of launching leadership bids. These attacks came from Number 10, nowhere else, his toxic Number 10. The person responsible for the culture in Number 10 is his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney. Does the Prime Minister have full confidence in him?
Morgan McSweeney, my team and I are absolutely focused on delivering for the country. And let me be clear, of course, Mr Speaker, I've never authorised attacks on Cabinet members. I appointed them to their posts because they're the best people to carry out their job.
Well, let's talk now to Andy Preston. Andy's a political commentator and former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. Andy, I am not entirely sure people sitting at home are really that worried about Keir Starmer's future. He's clearly worried about it. There are clearly lots of issues and lots of... Maybe this is a Westminster bubble story, I don't know. What do you think of this, and does it really matter whether Keir Starmer is under pressure? He's clearly under pressure, but whether his leadership is under pressure, because there are many of our viewers and listeners who I'm not sure they would really care. Well, they certainly care who the Prime Minister is, but whether it's Keir Starmer, Wes Streeting, David Lammy, Angela Rayner, maybe we would just have the same outcome. I don't know. What do you think of all of this?
Hi, Peter. Hello, everyone. I think that this doesn't matter too much to my mother, you know, who's cooking at home probably right now, or, you know, someone down the street. But you know what, Peter? It's another thing, isn't it? And when you listen to Keir Starmer then, he sounds like a deeply rattled, terrified individual. He sounds a bit like a librarian who's been hauled in front of his bosses and is in big trouble for something. And I think that it matters in the sense that he has now lost all credibility with the Labour Party. In my opinion, I think, Peter, I remember a conversation we had maybe 6-9 months ago. I remember saying that I didn't think he would last the course. And I remember you saying, really? And I really didn't then. And I'm certain now that he won't. I think now it's just a question of when he goes. I think that Starmer's allies who put out this accusation towards Wes Streeting, that was the most generous thing they could do to boost the coup. The coup is happening. I think the gun's being fired, and I think that it's on other people's terms now. Wes Streeting is in the driving seat. I've no doubt he'd like to be PM. And the last thing I'll say, sorry to labour the same point, but the last thing I'll say, Peter, is that Labour are in an unprecedentedly bad position. I think that their average poll rating now from the last 5 or 6 is about 18%. They've lost the public. They're fighting amongst themselves like we haven't seen.
And this is the point, Andy, isn't it? They are fighting upon themselves. And Benny in Belfast has said this is distraction politics, and the economy is screwed at the moment. The budget is about to cripple us even further. There are issues that really matter to people's lives. We've been talking about construction. We've got various people, including Ernie's, been in touch about that. I'll read out his message in a minute. Leslie as well in Torbay. And there are serious issues with our economy. But actually, of course, the speculation could have an effect on the economy because it could affect the markets. But actually, the real issues and the real leadership that is needed perhaps isn't there, especially when we've got the budget coming up in a couple of weeks' time, Andy.
Keir Starmer, he showed us 2 months ago that he and Richard Reeve, they've lost their ability to govern and get things done. They wanted to slow down the rate of rise of welfare payments. They wanted to slow down the amount of increase that we were spending every year on that part of the budget, and the backbenchers wouldn't let them do it. The backbenchers rebelled. That was 2 months ago. It's got worse now, Peter. So we've got a Prime Minister and part of a cabinet that has no authority with the Parliamentary Labour Party, and that does impact the economy because it means they can't action anything they want to do or anything that's remotely controversial or painful. So I think we're now entering the beginning of a democratic crisis where a government with no moral mandate anymore is going to be lumbering along, and I think that Wes Streeting and others will pop up to challenge him any day now.
Andy, let's talk about Donald Trump. He says he has an obligation to sue the BBC over the doctored speech that was out there. We'll see what happens and what the BBC does and whether they reach any form of accommodation by Friday evening, which he says is the deadline. He's under pressure himself, of course, because of this Jeffrey Epstein email to Ghislaine Maxwell that has emerged about one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims and time that Trump spent. I mean, we don't know what happened during that time, obviously, but it's interesting from Trump's perspective because of that email. Presumably that will have more to do with his reputation and the time that he is questioned about all these issues than the BBC issue, even though he talked about it on Fox News last night.
Yeah, Trump is unquestionably linked deeply with this Epstein web. We don't know what he did or what he didn't do. I'm certainly not saying he is a criminal in this case, but he's definitely involved, and he's definitely promised in the past to open up the files, and now he's going quiet, so it looks like he's got something to hide. So Peter, what's happened now with this BBC situation, the shocking piece of journalism that was completely wrong, disgusting and disgraceful, it's a gift for Trump because it plays to the idea that he is a victim, that the establishment, that people are against him, and he can link the BBC journalists going for him and not playing by the rules and breaking the rules with the Epstein story and say both of them are fake.
Well, Caroline Levitt, who is his press secretary, she'll be speaking in a few minutes' time. We'll maybe bring you a little bit of that. But in the meantime, let's find out what Donald Trump said to Fox News on this particular matter about the BBC.
Are you going ahead and suing the BBC?
Well, I guess I have to. You know, why not? Because they defrauded the public, and they've admitted it. And their top echelon,
Director General and the CEO,
this is within one of our great allies. You know, this is supposedly our great ally, BBC. The government has a chunk of that one, I guess. But that's a pretty sad event. They actually changed my January 6th speech, which was a beautiful speech, which was a very calming speech, and they made it sound radical. And they actually changed it. What they did was rather incredible. They're showing me the results later on, the results of what they did, how they butchered it up. But it was very dishonest, and the head man quit, and a lot of the other people.
Donald Trump there speaking to Fox News. We may well bring you a bit of what Caroline Levitt, his press secretary, is saying. No doubt she'll be questioned about Epstein. I would imagine that'll be the first thing she's questioned about. She may well be questioned about the BBC. She will have a press conference very, very soon. We may well bring you a bit of that. But in the meantime, Andy, what do you think the conclusion of all of this will be? I mean, the BBC's not going to pay Donald Trump $1 billion, is it?
Well, it might conceivably have to, or everything I've read on the legal side suggests that would be unlikely. But you know what? When you go to court, you never know. Trump is the winner in this. He's winning morally. Interestingly, when he says that his speech was beautiful and calming, well, that's definitely not true. He was certainly wronged by the BBC. It was disgraceful, but his speech was far from calming. He roused the assembled rabble and incited them by talking about how the election was stolen, which it categorically wasn't stolen. It was won fair and square by his opponent. So I think that Trump is the victim here, but I think that he is lying now when he says that he delivered a beautiful and calming speech to the people assembled.
Andy, thank you.
I have to say about the BBC. Sorry, I was just going to say about the BBC.
Yes.
If they were to lose, it's conceivable that their total costs could be something like $1.5 billion. And that would be something like £1.2 billion. That's out of a total budget of 5.7. So that would hobble the organisation completely for years.
Although usually when people sue, they sue for a huge amount and get an awful lot less. And people who have won libel cases in the past usually get an awful lot less in our courts. But of course they may well be sued in Florida. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Andy, thank you, Andy Preston, there, political commentator and former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. Dalen Staining has been in touch again. He says, I genuinely feel and strongly hope that this is the beginning of the end for Starmer. 2 weeks is what I give it. Roll in the vote of no confidence. Well, 2 weeks from now will be the budget deal, so that would be a very, very difficult thing for the country and for Labour to deal with. It'll be interesting to see what happens. Ernie, as promised, I'll read out your message. Ernie says, hi Peter, when I was 20 I lost my job as a van driver and had to go on what was the dole back then in the 70s. I was offered a place on a bricklayer course which was for 6 months and every day I'm getting a little bit extra on my dole, which was the equivalent of a 4-year apprenticeship going to college 1 day a week. I passed with honours, I got my City and Guilds qualification qualification, which is the same qualification as an apprenticeship. I was on site the week after I finished. I must have built thousands of homes over the years. I'm 68 now and still working as a handyman. I've never looked back. Ernie, what a great tale, and you're clearly someone who works hard and you've contributed a heck of a lot, so thanks for that tale. I wish more people would have your attitude. Leslie in Torbay says, I love your shows. Thank you, Leslie. Keep doing what you're doing. They are constantly building large housing estates here, but 3, 4 and 5 bedroom homes. These are not affordable for the people who need them. Large building companies are making a huge profit but not helping those who need homes. Also, more and more green fields and farmland are disappearing so these estates can be built. Labour say they want to build more homes, but how about building affordable homes? That is surely what is so desperately needed. Here, Leslie, your points are very, very good ones. We'll take more of your calls, texts, tweets and voice notes. We'll also probably, once it starts, hear from Caroline Levitt, who is the press secretary at the White House. I would imagine the Epstein story, probably the BBC story as well, will be something she'll be asked about. We'll go live to the White House when she starts speaking. Plenty to talk about here on Talk, and if you want to get your voice on the air between now and 7 o'clock, you have 42 minutes to do so. 0344 499 1000.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks so much to everybody who has been in touch. Mark in Lincolnshire is on the line, 0344 499 1000. I think, Mark, what you want to talk about is the new Archbishop of Canterbury, who's talking about the baptisms of asylum seekers who come here. What's your view on this, Mark? Good to talk to you this evening.
Hi, good evening, Peter.
Hi there.
Hi there. Just really quickly before I go on to that about the Archbishop, I'm going to take a wild guess that Pascal Robinson Foster is not getting a Christmas card this year.
He's not getting a Christmas card this year, certainly not from me anyway. He may well get them from other people, but they're not from me, although you are getting one, Mark.
Oh, thank you so much. I do appreciate it. I'll endeavour to get one back to you.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear it.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, the Archbishop thing, it's... obviously, you know, my position, I'm a Christian. Mass baptisms of any kind is not something I particularly agree with. Baptisms, particularly for an adult, you know, fully conscious, free-willed adult, it should be a very, you know, personal thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just handing the, you know, dishing them out willy-nilly seems a lot more to me more of an ideologically based position than anything else.
Well, it's really interesting you mention that, Mark, because it's basically, I come from quite a religious sort of background, family and community in Northern Ireland, and almost everyone I know has been christened and baptised from Northern Ireland. Almost everyone. Certainly every child in my class would have been christened or baptised. I wasn't, and my parents, one of whom is very Christian and very much takes their faith very, very seriously every single day. They decided, actually, we're going to wait until both our children are of age or adults and can decide for themselves whether they want to be baptised at that stage, because it's up to them. It should be a personal decision. The point in this, I suppose, Mark, is people who are saying, I am a Christian, baptise me. I will then have evidence, essentially, of their faith, which is obviously a hard thing to prove. And what we've seen previously is people saying, well, if I'm a Christian and you want to send me back to a part of the world where that would put that person in danger, well then that's something that has been used as a technique. It may not be a huge problem, but the new Archbishop of Canterbury seems to be in favour of these baptisms.
Yeah, well, this is it. I mean, what you were saying there about, you know, your situation there. Most people, I mean, this country, when I grew up, would get their baby baptised. I mean, that's more of a parental thing, you know, trying to get the protection of the Lord, I guess, on a baby. Yeah. Which is understandable, but I think there's a lot to say for actually having, you know, the born-again side of it and having an adult baptism. Because, as you say, you know, it's something that you do as a conscious adult. It's quite
or not do. You know, I haven't done it because I'm now a hopeless agnostic. You know, I don't have faith.
I mean, yeah, obviously you don't have to do it. As far as the Church of England position, it's, you know, as I say, it's quite an ideological thing from where I can see. And it just seems to me that, you know, as I've said in the past, the Church of England, if you look at some of the Anglican churches around the world, they would consider the Church of England as apostate, really.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. And that's actually, sorry, Mark, we're just going to leave it there. I will talk to you on another occasion, just because I agree with you, actually, on the Church of England's problems, but we've just got to go to the White House to hear from Caroline Levitt, who is the White House press secretary. Here she is.
Share that with all of you today. So, Cash, please, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Caroline. As Caroline mentioned, we have some tremendous news.
Someone else?
Thanks to President Donald J. Trump once again for the American people. As soon as the President of the United States took office, he issued a mandate to rid America of the scourge that is fentanyl, a drug that has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. Thanks to his leadership and direct engagements with China.
So that press conference is clearly this announcement about fentanyl, which is a major problem for America. It's not directly relevant to what we're discussing in the programme today. I thought Caroline Levitt, and we thought here in the office, you never quite know what they're going to talk about, but certainly if she takes questions later on, we may well come back to that. If she does that before 7 o'clock our time, it is of course lunchtime in Washington, and if she takes questions which may involve questions about Jeffrey Epstein, they may involve questions about the BBC as well, we'll bring that to you, but just for the meantime that's not directly relevant. So I'll go on to another call. Jill is in Cornwall. Give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Jill, you're very welcome to the programme. I think it's the BBC you want to talk about.
Well, goodness me, they just don't seem to be out of the headlines at all of late, and it's all wrong. You know, I think that the BBC is hoping that it can destroy Donald Trump and his views and everything else. But my concern is that singer, and I don't think I can pronounce his name actually, that stood up and
Pascal Robinson Foster, yeah.
Yes, and stood up and said what he said about the Jewish people, and the BBC sort of did nothing about it.
They kept him on air for another 40 minutes.
Did nothing, absolutely nothing. And when you think that poor woman that had made a comment on YouTube about, you know, her feelings towards what was happening, and she got put in prison for all that time, I mean, it just goes to show how the justice system is not fair anymore. It is not, it doesn't apply to all of us, it's just some of us. I think that unless you think the way the government tells you to think, then you could be in trouble. And she got treated really unfairly. The BBC and this singer, who is going to be allowed to carry on where he left off, it just doesn't seem right.
I agree with you, Jill. It'll be very interesting to see whether or not this is the Metropolitan Police Force that's made this decision today. It'll be interesting to see what Avon and Somerset Police do. I've been in touch with them again today about what they're doing, and there's no development in any of that. Jill, I just agree with you. I mean, if you shout death, death to the IDF, and if you talk about the deaths of individual soldiers and wanting them to be killed, well, that to me is incitement.
That's even worse than just writing a comment.
As many people will absolutely agree with you on, Jill. Listen, thank you for your call. I really appreciate it. There's so much to talk about. We're going to talk to Will Barker in a second. He's Deputy Head of News at The Sun about what is in the paper tomorrow. No doubt Keir Starmer's future will be part of their coverage, as will many, many other issues about the economy and other things. The issue about wipers on buses, yes, really. It's funny, actually. Ryan, who's the producer of this programme, said to me earlier, someone sent a message in about wipers on buses. I'm sure you don't want to read it out. I said, do you know what? Let's read it out. We're the home of free speech. I'm not sure this falls into the bracket of the home of common sense, but anyway, we are the home of free speech. If people want to talk about things, wipers on buses, whatever it is, and they want to get in touch, and it sparked quite a reaction, including from Sharon. He says, talking of wipers on buses, this was the idea that the top deck of a bus, if you're sitting on the top deck of a bus, which is quite a pleasant experience actually when you're sort of above the cab of the driver. I've done it myself. Sharon says, talking of wipers on buses, I want to know whose idea was it to give plastic bottle caps attached to the drinks bottles, difficult to pour and drink from. Another stupid EU directive. Why is this still continuing after Brexit? Well, the thing is, Sharon, that in those factories on mainland Europe and here, if they export between the two, they need to have the same kind of bottle tops, and the EU say they have to do that, so we have to suffer from it as well. I don't know about you, Sharon, but what I do is I get my bottle, usually a can of Diet Coke, it must be said, is in my possession. But if I have a bottle of Diet Coke, usually what I do is I take it off and then I physically break the things off. It takes a bit more effort, but it's certainly something that gives me a level of satisfaction, even though then you have those little bits sticking out. Some would argue there might be more important topics to talk about. You never know. We will continue to the conversation between now and 7 o'clock, so stay with us here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch. We'll get to more of your calls in just a minute. Between now and 7, there's lots to talk about, including with Will Barker, who's the Deputy Head of News at The Sun. Will, lovely to see you in the studio again. How are you doing? How's your day?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, good. Busy.
Good. You've combined two of the biggest stories. Wes, I'm a faithful. Wes Streeting here.
The day had a very weird start with all this sort of stuff coming out of Number 10. The government really seemed to sort of be tying themselves in knots. And last week we had Rachel Reeves. We portrayed her as a traitor because she was sort of going back on their manifesto promises. We've had Lammy letting out prisoners, and now we've had Wes having to declare he's a faithful because he's not about to backstab the Prime Minister. And so yeah, we don't really know. We can't really get to the bottom of what is going on. The PM seems to have done a preemptive strike on this to sort of knock down the plotters, and all this sort of 17 months before an election's going to happen. And it just seems that they seem to be running around and not really know where they're going at the moment.
Can we see that clip from Wes Streeting again from Sky News this morning? I thought it was pretty funny actually, where he was saying because he is arguing that he's absolutely nothing to do with this. This is what Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, told Sky News this morning.
Downing Street figures suspect that Streeting could demand the Prime Minister's resignation in the days after the budget. Are you going to rule that out?
Yes, and nor did I shoot JFK. I don't know where Lord Lucan is. Had nothing to do with Shergar. And I do think that the US did manage to do the moon landings. I don't think they were faked, certainly not by me.
You sort of wonder what she's saying. What about? You know, what's the next question? Yeah. What about the Lindbergh baby? You know. So, from your perspective, this is obviously a big story for the Sun. Wes Streeting, how popular is he with Sun readers?
Yeah, massively actually. I mean, considering how a lot of his Labour colleagues are doing, he's sort of bang on, really.
Yeah.
And I think they're all sort of scratching ahead. Bizarrely, I've got a mate in there, and I texted him this morning saying, "What is all this weirdness?" He said he thinks it's weird from the outside. It's even weirder on the inside. It's just because I think they're all kind of slightly befuddled by all of it. Really.
Yeah. I'm a Celebrity is starting again. Kelly Brook has been offered fat jabs by a doctor, but she's turned them down.
Yes. So we get it starts the weekend. The programme ITV1. We get very excited about it. We've sent our reporter Amir out there. He's already tried one of the Bush Tucker trials.
Right. Some of the celebrities want to do fewer of them, don't they? They don't want more than 2 in a row.
Only 2 in a row,
but surely the point is that you can nominate the person you don't like to do as many Bush Tucker trials as possible.
Yeah, I mean,
I only watched one series of it. That was when Matt Hancock was in it. Because I kept getting asked about it on air, and I thought I better watch this. But it was, I mean, I could see why it's a popular series.
Yeah, so there's a crop of celebs who have all gone out. They've arrived, and there's an interview with Kelly's emerged, which we're doing a spread on tomorrow, in which she said she's embracing her curves. She's sort of well known as a kind of a very curvaceous sort of model, and she says that she went to a doctor's, and the doctor said, "Everybody's on Mounjaro at the moment. Why don't you have a go?" And she said, "Oh no, I don't. I'm completely happy, and I'm very body happy, and you know, and this is who I am."
Yeah,
I think, which is quite.
Do you want to take the opportunity right now, Will, to deny to the nation, put on record whether you're on Mounjaro or not?
I am not. No, definitely, 100%.
Or
I'm not.
so you would have us believe. No, you don't need to be. You certainly don't need to be. Tell us about Baroness Helen Newlove. She was 63.
This is a very tragic, but an incredible woman. We did a lot with Helen back in the day, following the tragic death of her husband in a stabbing. It was one of those crimes that really shocked the country at the time. And we fully got behind, and I remember going, often you go to these sort of victims of crime and they clearly don't want the spotlight. They don't want to, they just prefer to grieve in privacy, which is completely fine. She just went the opposite way, and she absolutely embraced it and wanted to make the point about knife crime, and she did loads of stuff with us. And then it then sort of she became involved with the Lords, ended up becoming a victims commissioner, and it was almost like a new chapter of her life, sort of. She then took, it was an incredibly central part in government, but very sadly she had a short illness and died at age, I think, just 63.
And I note that another brilliant victims campaigner, someone who just has such incredible dignity. I've interviewed her husband, actually, Margaret Mizzen. Her son Jimmy, murdered in 2008, paid tribute to Baroness Newlove, saying she was passionate about victims and their rights and worked tirelessly. And Margaret Mizzen is just someone who can perhaps, with her husband, pick up that mantle and fight for those victims. She'd be a great victims commissioner.
Oh,
actually.
absolutely. Yeah, because
really
I mean, you can imagine if it goes through, you just want to go and hide under a rock or something. But these people are just go front and centre and
absolutely,
and
Tell us about Britain's worst driver.
Well, this is an incredible bloke. He's 66. He's a mobile DJ.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore. Well, he's not very mobile. Maybe he walks around with his kid. But anyway, he's been banned from driving, and this is the 70th time he's been banned.
70 times. Surely you can permanently ban someone after like the 10th time.
I think they've given him jail time before, and he's never passed his test.
Wow, this
so
is
if you're on the
dreadful.
roads of Leeds, just look out for Thomas Feely, because you probably steer well clear.
He's been branded an absolute menace by magistrates after they disqualified him for another 2 years. How can you disqualify someone from something they're not qualified to do? That's my question. Yeah.
Well, I guess you get a sort of a standard, just a temporary licence or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Very interesting. Well, a lot of detail here, and he's got, what is this, clocked up 142 driving offences and was in prison for 16 weeks. My goodness, so he's banned from the roads yet again. I don't think I'd be booking him for a DJ set anytime soon. I'm going to ask you about another very important story. Forget Kelly Brook and her curves. Ernie says, hi Peter, wipers on the top deck of a bus seemed like a good idea. If the driver takes a wrong turning and you're heading for a low bridge, you can duck, says Ernie. And Tim says there should also be wipers on the inside of the front top windows when they steam up. Where do you stand, Will, on the big issue of the day, whether there should be wipers on the top deck of a bus?
Inside, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, or outside.
Yeah, maybe outside. I can't think of the last time I went on the top deck of a...
Well, you're missing out. You're missing out. I'll throw another one at you. Hev says, now we're having these important discussions. Hev says, should pineapple be allowed on pizza? That is a controversial question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of
definitely.
I went to Pizza Express. Other pizza restaurants are available. They're just not as good. I went there yesterday as a gold tier member and tried their new Christmas-related pizza, which is ham hock with cola. Which was lovely, combining.
Well, we've been getting all the Christmas menus turning up in the office. We've had Subway and all sorts, Popeye and etc.
You must get samples and things sent into your newsroom as well.
We haven't had the pizza. I'll suggest we try and get the pizza one in.
I think you should. I think you should. I'm a gold tier member and an evangelist for Pizza Express. Will, we've been through quite a number of different issues in this segment. Thank you very much. That's Will Barker, there, Deputy Head of News at The Sun. The paper, of course, is out tomorrow with all those stories in it, and you can get them online as well at thesun.co.uk. Lots to discuss with your calls, and also Matthew Torbett, the former Labour advisor, is going to be in the studio in just a second in regard to Keir Starmer, the budget, construction, all the big issues we're talking about today. Bob Villan as well. Lots to discuss. Make sure you get your call in between now and 7 o'clock. 0344 499 1000.
Big news coming this December. Our talkTV app is moving to the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. From Monday, 1st of December, the talkTV app will no longer exist, so don't miss out. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Let's go live to the White House now. Caroline Leavitt is the White House press secretary. She's taking questions.
Just deem it as official policy, and sometimes that misleads people a little bit. Sure.
There's been a question about UK intelligence sharing regarding the drunk interdictions involving Venezuelan boats. How will that affect the U.S. military operation? There's been a lot of discussion about the high caliber of the intelligence that has been provided before any of these military actions have taken place.
I've seen that report. Oh, hello. I've seen that report. I'm familiar with the reporting, but we don't comment on intelligence matters, classified intelligence matters, as you know. As for the Trump administration's position on our narco-terrorist campaign in the Caribbean, it is going to continue, and the president has made it very clear he's not going to allow terrorists to bring illegal drugs that kill American citizens into our great country. Sure, John. I'll go to John and then Zolan. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Trump has talked about sending out $2,000 checks to U.S. citizens. Earlier this year, he also talked about sending a Doge dividend. That didn't materialize. Should U.S. Citizens expect the $2,000 proposal? Is the White House committed?
Well, Caroline Leavitt talked about Jeffrey Epstein a little bit earlier on. We were in another interview at the time. She also interviewed the FBI director. She introduced the FBI director, Kash Patel, there, who I didn't instantly recognise. Becca has called me a donut for not recognising Kash Patel. Apologies for that. He talked about fentanyl, and she's talked there, of course, about the story from page of the Times today, actually, about allegations that the UK is not sharing intelligence with America because they're worried about extrajudicial killings. Very interesting story there, which she decided, of course, not to comment on because it's an intelligence matter. That's usually the stance of most governments. They don't generally talk about intelligence. Speaking of intelligent people, Matthew Torbett is in the studio, former Labour advisor, and certainly relations between the White House and Keir Starmer will be an interesting thing to look at in the near future with that intelligence story, but particularly in regard to his own future, because we saw at Prime Minister's questions today how under pressure he is. Now, you might say this is Westminster gossip, tittle tattle, whatever, but who the Prime Minister is, of course, is important. Give me your thoughts on the fact that, we've got a budget in a couple of weeks' time. We've got a Prime Minister who has a large majority, yet at the same time he doesn't seem secure.
No, I said in opposition on election night or the following day that a large PLP is not necessarily a happy one. You've got a lot
Parliamentary
of people,
Labour Party, yeah.
Got a lot of people to keep happy, all with different priorities, different types of constituencies, rural, urban, whatever else. This is insane. This is the bluntest I can put it. You, on a couple of weeks from a very key budget, you seem to be trying to keep backbenchers happy with talk of a two-child cap being lifted. That will keep many people happy in the backbenches. And you want to brief on, and this is not Keir Starmer, I have no doubt that this is all happening around him as ever and he's not in control, which is sort of a savage indictment on the current
well, it was often said when someone asked, is he the driver of the train? And they said yes, but it's one of those the Docklands Light Railway ones that are driverless trains. That was the sort of joke about Keir Starmer, that others around him were actually pulling the strings.
Yeah, no, and listen, I saw a member of the Downing Street team briefing Patrick Maguire yesterday. I saw the same member of the Downing Street staff briefing Chris Mason yesterday. Now, that might just be a coincidence, happy coincidence, but it came as no surprise to see what then followed. You're going out to say that the Prime Minister is weak 2 weeks before the budget and is possibly at risk 2 weeks before a big budget. You're then saying to be so intellectually bereft of ideas and policies, and he has to stay because we've only just got started with the work that we want to do. We've got all these policies, this renewal for Britain, a decade of renewal. You're saying basically the markets and Trump is the reason he has to stay. That's how intellectually bereft this current operation is in Downing Street. West Streeting comes out of it smelling the roses. You've given him a moral high ground to stand on, and he took it very well today. I thought he came across, and I say this as no real fan of West Streeting. He's always been very charming and nice to me, but he's certainly not my politics of the Labour Party. He came across as human, likeable, quite charming and quite funny, which ironically is all the things that Keir Starmer struggles with and isn't, so therefore it made him look even better. I think they've probably bought themselves some time. It would be silly now to challenge before May. It would also be very silly to now not resign after May when we get beaten. So it's very much a time of if not when, or when not if. So when not if.
Certainly. And you think he'll get through to that stage and then resign? I
think possibly. We'll have to see how the budget lands. This is why I didn't buy any of this conference talk on either side, that Keir and Kemi were both safe. I thought they got through conference. That was an achievement, I suppose, with Burnham on one side, Jenrick on the other. The budget will fall very unpopular and Kemi's response will no doubt fall flat, and this talk will continue. And I had 3 or 4 different apologies this morning from people who I had been telling there is going to be a challenge after the budget, and it will come from West Streeting. People say that would be insane, and yet this is the talk that we're hearing.
He denies all of it, of course, but at Prime Minister's questions, Kemi Badenoch gave the Prime Minister quite a going over. She used 3 of her 6 questions on this. Let's just take a look at some of these exchanges.
Unbelievably, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's advisers have been reduced to briefing that MPs can't get rid of him, and I'm not making this up, they can't get rid of him because it would destabilise international markets. Why does the Prime Minister think that there would be a market meltdown if the Health Secretary took over?
This is a united team and we are delivering together. Look what we're doing. The fastest growth of the G7. 5 interest rate cuts. Trade deals with the EU, the US and India, all of which they oppose. We've delivered.
And that toxic behaviour that Kemi Badenoch alleged of Keir Starmer's team, that was part of another exchange that they had at Prime Minister's questions.
This morning on the BBC, the Health Secretary said there is a toxic culture in Downing Street that needs to change. He's right, isn't he?
Mr. Speaker, my focus each and every day is on rebuilding and renewing our country. But let me be absolutely clear, any attack on any member of my cabinet is completely unacceptable. On the Health Secretary, Mr. Speaker, in relation to Health Secretary, he promised before the election that in the first year of a Labour government we'd deliver 2 million extra appointments. We didn't deliver 2 million, or 3 or 4. We delivered 5 million extra appointments. And today the Health Secretary is in Manchester, where he's announcing that because of the action he's taken to abolish NHS England, he's putting more people on the front line. He's doing a great job, as is the whole of my cabinet.
Keir Starmer there, and you'll notice in the middle of that, if you're watching on the screen, you'll notice there was a sort of a little white flash in the middle. That's to denote that time has passed, but we're not changing the meaning of what Keir Starmer has said. The editor who put that together is a guy called Porrick, and he is a man of great moral rectitude who would not try to mislead people. Not that any other broadcasting organisation would have done that, obviously, in the last few days, or any controversy about that. Matthew, on Keir Starmer, certainly he says that he didn't really engage with the toxicity. He backed his team, certainly, but as you have found out, as we know, there are senior members who've been briefing against West Streeting and so on. At what stage does the Prime Minister take responsibility for this and actually start talking about the big things that really do matter? He would say he wants to talk about the health system, for example, and that's fine, that we should be talking about that. We talked about construction today, we talked about the economy, the budget. I mean, this kind of who's up, who's down kind of stuff. It is important to a degree, but I just wonder at what stage you think the Labour Party is at risk of being consumed by this, because when they start talking about that, that's it. You can't really, you're sort of paralysed in government, aren't you?
Too late. We're consumed. It's too late. To take responsibility, he would have to take control. Therefore, he has to sack people that are doing this sort of stuff. Doesn't matter how important they are, whether they are your ideological brain because you haven't quite got one, they have to be sacked. To also allow you to survive, if I'm honest, to send a message to the Labour backbenchers and the Cabinet who are being briefed against constantly by the same boys in number 10. We all know who they are, everybody knows it's them, and yet the Prime Minister hasn't got the backbone to go, I'm going to stand up for my MPs because I back them every step of the way. We work through this together. That's what the Labour Party is about, and unfortunately he doesn't want to do that.
Why not, do you think? Is it just weakness? Is it not understanding politics? Is it trying to focus on more important issues? What is it about his character, about the way he operates that won't... I mean, he's sacked a number of people. He sacked Sue Gray. He's got rid of Matthew Doyle, who was his Director of Communications. Sue Gray was, of course, the Chief of Staff. He can be ruthless when he needs to, but he hasn't done it in regard to those people you just mentioned.
I don't know of his loyalty. The two I think of in particular have been with him since he came in as an MP, one in particular, so we're going back to 2015. Does he rely on them too much? Quite possibly, but these people are supposed to be your eyes and ears, and if they don't know that people are briefing because it's them, but to say it's not, they don't know, then you're failing. And ultimately, you're killing yourself. You're killing your leadership by allowing this to happen and looking like you're not taking action, particularly when you're showing loyalty to the same people and also not committing to sack them. I actually think, as a very moot point, a very Westminster point, I actually think it's disgraceful that he's not yet spoken to West Streeting about any of this. You would want to get in front of this and go, this is nothing to do with me. People will be accountable for this, and I don't want this to ruin what we've got going forward. He's shied away. That is not a leader. That is somebody that shirks responsibility, to be quite frank. We should be talking about the issues.
Well, let's talk about them now. Let's talk about, the real choices. The two-child benefit cap, for example, lifting that. Is that an ideological choice? Is that a political choice to say to the backbenchers, actually, I hear you, I hear what you're saying, I'm not entirely in control, therefore I've got to do what you want me to do, which I believe the recognising a Palestinian state was as a decision. Is it actually something he wants to do? Can he afford it? These are big choices that are going to be in the next couple of weeks, and it'll be fascinating to see what happens, what decisions are made, and what the outcome is politically and financially.
So I think it's a bit of both. There's an ideological point of he puts child poverty at the forefront of much of his strategy, so we're told, and that this is one of the quickest routes to lifting 600,000 kids out of poverty. There's also a political point of he needs to give a little bit of sugar to help the medicine go down with regards to budget, and there's going to be difficult decisions that Rachel Reeves is going to have to make, particularly if that's a likely raise to income tax. And they've got to be careful about how they sell this. I mean, 60% of people, when polled, support the two-child cap, and there's definitely a conversation to be had about making work pay, and you should not be able to essentially earn more or make more money on the state than you should be for working. I think the way the Labour Party would be best framing this is, look, yes, you should plan to have children, you should be able to afford to have them and all the rest of it. But in some cases, things happen. People are made redundant, there's a death in the family, all these sorts of things.
Marriages break up.
Yeah, and should the child, because that is who's punished, should the child be punished in this case? Do we want to look after our children and have them go out
into
the world?
So you, by what I'm hearing, think it should be lifted?
I think in principle, yeah. I totally get the economic argument. I think there's other ways that maybe you could do this to please people. I spoke on your show previously about removing VAT, and I think that allows certainly people on the poorer end of the spectrum to have more money and be able to spend that money, and then that turns into sort of little bits of growth in the economy. There's other ways you can do this, probably not as palatable to definitely very angry, or as Starmer's operation called them, feral backbenchers. You've got to keep them on side as long as you can.
OK, Matthew, thank you very much indeed. That's Matthew Torbett there, former Labour advisor, joining us in the studio. Keir Starmer in trouble. Lots of people getting in touch. No doubt it will be discussed in Kevin O'Sullivan's programme, which is coming up after the news. That is on between 7 and 10. I'll be back between 4 and 7 tomorrow, and indeed on Friday, and on the weekend between 10 and 1. Let me read out a couple of messages just before we go. David Walthamstow says, great show, Peter. Thank you, Dave. Who built the majority of the buildings in this country for the last 80 years? The fantastic Irish builders. Many of them went back to Ireland because because they're being pushed out of the industry because of the lowering of wages. If we paid the right wages, we would have the builders. Well, really interesting point in regard to what I was speaking to Stephen Mulholland, the chief exec of the Construction Plant Hire Association, a little bit early on that, and the low wages that so many apprentices particularly get, lower than working in retail, for example. Both very, very good and reasonable jobs, but of course if you have the choice between being out in a building site and standing in a nice warm shop, I know what I would choose, to say nothing of the fact I'd be dreadful